Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will explore a new case, the case of Nohima Graber. When a student at Fairfield High School received his Spanish test results, he found that his entire exam had been marked in red pen. He had failed because received a low grade. He was furious in front of his classmates, but the teacher reassured him, stating that she believed in his abilities and that he just needed to prepare better for the next test. Little did the elderly woman know that this would later have a tragic effect on her life. Fairfield is a small, quiet town in the southeastern part of the state of Quince, with a population of around 99,000 people. It features beautiful architecture and has about 12 parks and recreational areas, which is a significant number for a town of its size. One of these parks was a favorite walking spot for teacher Nohima Graber. She followed a daily routine of taking a certain number of steps to stay active and maintain her health, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of nature. However, on November 2, 2021, after finishing her workday, Nohima was tragically killed, leaving the residents of Fairfield in shock and fear. What a devastating event for their once peaceful town. Nohima was born on November 10, 1954, in Jalapa, Mexico, where she grew up in a loving family. From a young age, she was known for her openness and kindness. At the age of 20, Nohima began her career as a flight attendant for a major Mexican airline, which allowed her to indulge her passion for travel and an active lifestyle. She became one of the first women in Mexico to train as a pilot, paving the way for future female pilots in this challenging yet prestigious field. In 1985, at the age of 31, Nohima met Paul Graber, who was visiting Mexico on a business trip. They first encountered each other at a nightclub. After their meeting, Paul received Nohima's phone number and called her a few days later. Initially, he thought she was ignoring him, but she agreed to go on a date. Their relationship quickly blossomed into a romance. After a year of dating, on October 4, 1986, Nohima and Paul got married in Mexico. They then settled in Nohima's hometown, where she continued her work in the airline industry while Paul found a job in this new country. In 1991, after 5 years of marriage, the Graber family welcomed their first child, a son named Christian. A year later, they had another son, Jareth. Nohima, who was 37 and had worked for 17 years, decided to focus on her family. During the 1990s, the area where they lived became increasingly dangerous, prompting they to make the significant decision to leave Mexico and move to America, Paul's homeland. In 1992, they settled in Fairfield, where Paul found a well-paying job and supported the family while Nohima became a stay-at-home mom. Soon after, she gave birth to their daughter, Naima. Nohima quickly adapted to life in the U.S. and began attending St. Mary's Catholic Church, where she made a donation and eventually became a community leader. As time went on, their children grew up and began to move out, leaving Nohima feeling bored and lacking purpose. Once she turned 50, she decided to pursue further education and enrolled at Westland University in Mount Plant, Iowa. There, she earned a degree in English and a teaching certificate. Nohima then secured a job at a high school in Atashtat, Iowa, where she taught Spanish for several years, gaining valuable experience. In 2012, Nohima began teaching at Fairfield High School. Her students and colleagues appreciated her greatly, often speaking of her fondly. Graduates would send her postcards and letters, and she made it a point to respond, and always ending her replies with her signature message, "Be more confident." On November 2, 2021, after school, Nohima drove to the park. She was active and enjoyed walking, but that day she did not return home. Her husband, Paul, grew concerned when she didn't answer his calls. He went to the park and searched their usual spots, but he was unable to find her anywhere, and her car, a blue 1997 Honda Odyssey, was also missing. Feeling anxious, Paul promptly contacted the police to report. Right away, a search began in the park for Nohima. Her colleagues reported that she had not shown up for work, and since the previous evening, she had stopped responding to calls and messages. Meanwhile, students contacted the police with information about their classmate. They revealed that the night before, he had shared disturbing photos on social network. These photos were sent by Jeremy Goodale, a 16-year-old student at Fairfield High School. Born in 2005, Jeremy grew up in a dysfunctional family with 4 older siblings. His parents frequently argued and were often absent, leaving the older children to care for the younger ones. Eventually, the parents divorced. The mother moved in with another man, leaving her children behind to live with their father in the family home. The living conditions in the house were chaotic. It was filled with dirt and dust, flies buzzed around, and the bed linens had gone unchanged for months. They washed only once a week. The children lacked female care and love, so looked unkempt. Jeremy was described by his classmates as a quiet and modest boy who played on a baseball team. He didn't stand out much, except for his messy appearance. However, Jeremy faced more serious issues. He struggled with depression, anxiety, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Doctors prescribed him medication to help. He studied Spanish with a teacher named Nohima, and his best friend was Willard Miller. Unlike Jeremy, Willard came from a wealthy family, but he found school challenging, particularly with foreign languages. Willard had recently transferred to Fairfield High School after attending a prestigious school with a tougher curriculum. On November 3, the body of Nohima was discovered near the railway in the north. She was lying on the ground wrapped in a tarpaulin, covered with old sleepers, various garbage, branches, and leaves. At the time of the discovery, she had died many hours ago. An initial examination revealed that Nohima died from blunt force trauma to the head. What does that mean? Her death was a homicide, and that her body had been deliberately concealed. Witnesses reported seeing Nohima's Honda Odyssey leave the park around 5:00 p.m. She had spent approximately 45 minutes there. However, the witnesses could not identify or describe the actual driver. Shortly afterward, the police found her blue Honda abandoned on a country road south of where her body was located. Another witness later came forward, stating they saw 2 young men walking along this same road around 5:30 p.m., heading back to the park. One of them was pushing an old garden wheelbarrow. Unfortunately, this witness could not describe the young men and did not remember their faces. Based on the suspicious photo that went viral, the police arrived at Jeremy's house. He seemed agitated. Although he knew that the teacher was missing, he was unaware that her body had already been discovered. He denied any involvement in her disappearance, but was not informed about what the police had found at his home. Detectives discovered a blood-stained baseball bat and several black hairs in his house. They also found clothes and a blood-stained terry towel belonging to him. On Jeremy's phone, they found a text file titled "Preparation," which detailed the items needed for a planned act, including rubber gloves, wet wipes, a backpack, a bag, a blanket, a garden wheelbarrow, and other supplies. The file also outlined a step-by-step plan of actions. After the officers finished inspecting Jeremy's house, they proceeded to Willard's home. At that time, Willard, like Jeremy, was unaware that their teacher had already been found dead. Willard remained calm during the police questioning and readily discussed how he and Jeremy had walked in the local park the previous evening. However, he became visibly nervous when the conversation shifted to Nohima. His demeanor changed as he mentioned that Nohima did not regard him highly and often underestimated him. Meanwhile, the community of Fairfield was shocked and mourned the passing of Nohima, as she was known to be kind, compassionate, and always helpful to her students, leaving everyone puzzled about why anyone would want to harm her. After searches of the houses, Jeremy Goodale and Willard Miller were arrested and taken into custody on suspicion of murdering their Spanish language teacher. During their interrogation, they were informed that the body had been discovered. Both provided similar accounts of the events. They admitted to walking in the park that afternoon when they encountered their teacher. They greeted her, but suddenly, a group of masked individuals attacked Nohima, hitting her on the head with a bat, causing her to lose consciousness and fall. Jeremy and Willard claimed they were forced to watch as the assailants continued to assault her. They alleged that they were then told to hide the body, take her car, and abandon it near a country road. Jeremy and Willard denied any wrongdoing, asserting that they were merely witnesses to the murder and had been compelled to obey the orders of the true criminals. However, evidence found in Jeremy's house suggested otherwise. The blood and hair found on the baseball bat, as well as the blood on Jeremy's clothes and towel, all belonged to Nohima. Furthermore, there were no witnesses who saw a group of masked individuals or any strangers in the park. A notebook discovered in Jeremy's house revealed that he and his friends had been stalking Nohima for several weeks. They recorded the times her classes ended, when she left school, how long she spent in her car, and where she went afterward. This detailed documentation of Nohima's schedule indicated that it was easy for them to predict her daily movements. The young men knew that Nohima walked in the park every day and were familiar with this route. They chose the right moment to attack Nohima while she was walking alone on a dark, deserted street. During questioning, Willard admitted that he disliked Nohima because he felt she always underestimated him. He acknowledged that he frequently argued with her during class, and his classmates had witnessed these confrontations. These two young men told conflicting stories. This time, Jeremy accused Willard of hitting Nohima, while Willard insisted he had not touched her, claiming that it was Jeremy who had killed her. During the investigation, the investigators was uncovered that on the day of the incident, Jeremy and Willard went to a park and concealed themselves in an out-of-the-way spot while they waited. When Nohima arrived, one of them struck her on the head with a bat, causing her to lose consciousness and collapse. The two then dragged her off the path and took turns assaulting her until she died. Afterward, they covered her body with branches and leaves before fleeing the scene in her car, which they abandoned on a country road. While walking, they made their way to Willard's house, where they took a garden wheelbarrow, a shovel, and a tarpaulin. They returned to the crime scene, wrapped the victim in the tarpaulin, placed her in the wheelbarrow, and transported her to the railroad tracks. There, they concealed the body by placing old railway sleepers, garbage, branches, and fallen leaves on top. Once the body was hidden, Jeremy and Willard returned home and attempted to clean up any evidence of their crime, believing they would never be discovered. Detectives discovered unusual search queries on Willard's phone, including, "Do students receive credit for a lesson if a teacher is seriously injured or dies during a course?" And, "What happens to students' work if a teacher dies mid-course?" Before the incident, Willard had planned a trip to Spain, but after receiving a low grade on a test, that trip became uncertain. Prosecutors viewed Willard as the main instigator of the crime, driven by a desire for revenge against the teacher, while his friend Jeremy appeared to be following Willard's lead. Additionally, Jeremy struggled with depression and anxiety, which made him emotionally vulnerable and easier to manipulate. This made him a more suitable accomplice for Willard's malicious scheme. During his trial in December 2021, Jeremy pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and agreed to testify against Willard. In his testimony, Jeremy claimed that Willard was the first to attack their teacher, Nohima Graber, on the afternoon of November 2, 2021, when they both invited her out. He stated that Willard pushed her, causing her to fall and sustain serious injuries. However, Jeremy also confessed that after Nohima lost consciousness, he used a baseball bat to strike her multiple times, resulting in her death. Jeremy claimed that he and Willard beat her together to ensure that Nohima would not survive. Throughout the trial, Jeremy continually cried and asked for forgiveness from the family of the deceased. He expressed deep remorse for what had happened. Willard also admitted his guilt, but maintained that Jeremy had delivered the first blow. In court, Willard was more composed. Like Jeremy, he sought forgiveness from the Graeber family. He said, "I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you. I regret that your family is suffering because of me. I sincerely apologize from the bottom of my heart. I fully recognize the seriousness of my actions. I know I was wrong." Willard Miller was the first to be sentenced in June 2023, receiving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Sadly, another tragic event occurred following this story. Nohima's husband, Paul Graeber, passed away in June 2023 from terminal cancer. Paul, 68, was buried the day before Willard's verdict was announced, and he never saw his wife's killers face justice. Paul's family and friends reported that he was deeply affected by his wife's death. They believed that if Nohima had been alive, she would have noticed Paul's illness early and sought timely treatment, which might have saved his life. In November 2023, Jeremy Goodale was found guilty in connection with the case of Nohima and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. During the trial, Jeremy was so distraught that he experienced a nosebleed and cried. He expressed regret, saying, "I wish I could turn back time to prevent this loss and the pain I caused the family. It was the worst decision of my life, and I take full responsibility for what I did." Nohima Graeber had 3 adult children, brothers, sisters, nephews, and nieces, who certainly miss their beloved and caring mother. They fondly remember their mother and father. It is known that the sons and daughter forgave the murderers and try not to remember them. After their mother's death, one of the sons found their mother's personal diary. In it, she wrote short notes about her life, expressing that she loved teaching and adored her students very much. Nohima wrote that she would always smile and give her students support, stating that even if she could not teach them anything new, just looking at her would help the students learn to love life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sonia Ivanova. Sonia, a 19 years old, a Native American resident, grew up in a small village about 180 kilometers southeast of Nome, Alaska, USA. She dreamed of living and studying in Hawaii, but she needed to earn money first. Determined to make a change, she decided to take action. Along with her best friend, Timer, she moved to Nome, where she got a job as a hospital administrator. Timer found work as a hotel receptionist. They shared an apartment and felt comfortable in their new surroundings. Without a car, they walked everywhere. Sonia's family was concerned for her safety because there had been incidents of Native American residents disappearing in Alaska. They were worried because she was too naive and gullible, making her vulnerable to deception. On Sunday, August 10, 2003, Sonia and Timer went to a bar to relax with friends. They stayed until 11 p.m., then left. Timer went to spend the night with other friends since she had to work in 6 hours. Sonia, having a day off, decided to enjoy a walk in the summer rain, which she found comforting and warm. As they said goodbye, they didn't realize that it would be the last time they would see each other. At 5 a.m., Timer came home to get ready for work. She was surprised to see that Sonia was not sleeping at home. At first, she thought Sonia might have slept over at other friends' houses. Throughout the day, she tried contacting Sonia multiple times, but all attempts failed, which made her worried. She decided to call Sonia's sister, Christina, and Christina's husband, Tim, but they also didn't know where Sonia was. Tuesday came, and Sonia still hadn't returned home, increasing Timer's anxiety to the point of panic. She remembered that Sonia never went anywhere without makeup. If Sonia had planned to spend 2 days with friends, Sonia will definitely stop by the house to pick up mascara and lipstick. After finishing her work shift at 5:15 p.m., she contacted the police to report Sonia missing. The police Reburn was skeptical, he thinking Sonia might be with friends, and asked Timer to wait. None of the people interviewed knew where Sonia had gone. Christina and Tim were also actively searching. They searched every part of the city and questioned everyone about Sonia's whereabouts. Their next lead was a young man named Kyun, who was a friend of Sonia and whom she apparently liked, but they couldn't locate him either. All their hopes were placed on the police. However, initially, the known police were not interested in searching for Sonia. It was only after the hospital where Sonia worked reported her disappearance that investigators seriously took on the case. Reburn questioned Timer once more. According to her, there is no problem between them. Sonia seemed happy. There were no arguments, and if they ever had misunderstandings, they would talk it out and quickly reconcile. Then, she joined the search operation with many volunteers and, along with her friend, searched for Sonia on the outskirts of the city. A moment later, the police received a call. Timer was hopeful, thinking that Sonia had been found. Indeed, Sonia was found, but the news brought no joy. A few hours earlier, a fireman noticed fresh tire tracks on a deserted road and decided to investigate. Soon, he was at the police station and tell everything. The officer Brand asked the fireman to show the location, and together they went to an abandoned gold mine. What the officer saw there shocked him. Although he couldn't see the woman's face, he immediately knew it was Sonia. When he learned what happened to Sonia, Timer felt extremely painful. Even after 20 years, the pain still lingers in her heart. It was extreme sadness, hopelessness, and anger. She was primarily angry with herself, believing that if she hadn't left Sonia alone to visit her friends for the night, Sonia might still be alive. Meanwhile, the investigation into the terrible murder began. Due to lack of skills and equipment, local detectives had difficulty investigating the case. So they turned to the Alaska Bureau of Investigation, ABI, for help, which specializes in investigating complex crimes such as murder. When investigators arrived, they immediately secured the scene. They using road barriers and shelter tents, fearing that precipitation might destroy important evidence. During their investigation, they discovered blood traces that had been driven over by a car. So, they suspected the perpetrator might have been responsible. Upon closer inspection, detectives noticed an unusual detail about the tire marks. One tread was different from the other three. This suggested that the suspect's vehicle had two different types of tires. Additionally, they found blue paint stains, likely from a vehicle. Because the paint stains are quite high above the ground, investigators theorized that the vehicle could have been an SUV or a truck. Further investigation revealed that Sonia had not been raped. There was no DNA evidence on her body or at the crime scene. This brutal murder has left the town's residents bewildered. And they do not know who is responsible. Sonia, a friendly girl, had no known enemies and hadn't been in conflicts with anyone. Officer Reburn revisited the list of Sonia's friends and was particularly interested in Daniel Ango, also known as Kyun. Tim and Christina had tried to reach him during the search for Sonia, but he did not respond. Police were aware of Kyun because previously, his ex-girlfriend had filed a complaint against him for mistreating her. He was considered a suspect, not only because of his temper but also because he owned a blue truck, have different tires. When investigators examined the vehicle, they discovered a blue awning with blood stains inside, as well as blood on white sneakers and one of the 3 guns in the truck. The tires were tested with a special chemical, revealing additional blood stains. Kyun was brought in for questioning. He stated that he hadn't seen Sonia for 2 weeks. He also was out of town hunting with friends when she disappeared. Despite this, detectives decided to investigate further. Later, He explained that the blood in his car came from a hare he accidentally hit. He said he had to put the hare out of its misery, but then suggested it might have been a porcupine he shot while hunting. With that, the interrogation ended, and he left the police station calmly. Timer and Christina are unhappy with the police investigation and feel it is stalling. A week after Sonia's body was discovered, they went to the Nome police station and attached a photo of her to the wall outside. An officer came out, told them to leave, and removed the photo. Despite this, Timer showed up at the station every morning at 8 a.m., standing there to demand answers. The public did not know that investigators had identified Kyun as the prime suspect and were not investigating anyone else. However, the detectives were mistaken. The blood found in Kyun's truck was not human, the tire tracks at the crime scene didn't match his vehicle, and the blue paint traces didn't match his truck's color. Kyun's story was true, and the investigation was halted. Only 2 of the 8 local police officers are still actively investigating the case: Officer Reburn, who had received information from Timer about Sonia, and Officer Brian, who was the first to arrive at the crime scene. However, Brian was unhappy with the investigation because he had been assigned to the night shift, which prevented him from conducting interrogations. Red Bear, according to Brian, didn't seem to take his job seriously and was slow to share new information with him. Brian is determined to find out the truth. He decided to review the case file during his night shifts. Suddenly, he noticed a message from a woman. She mentioned that she had seen Sonia while Sonia was missing. She saw Sonia get into the car. This was new information for Brian, and he quickly sought out the woman. He had a detailed conversation with her. The woman's name was Florence. She was surprised that no one had contacted or interviewed her. She explained that she had been standing outside her house with her sister, smoking, when Sonia walked by and greeted them. Then, a car passed by and blocked Sonia's path. He said something to her, after which she got into the car. They drove off in the direction where Sonia's body was found a few days later. Officer Brian thanks Florence and he begins to think about her statement. He was convinced that the ABA agents needed to return to the city and continue the investigation. One detail from Florence's story unsettled Brian. She had seen a sticker on the car Sonia entered, which read Nome Police Department. This suggested that one of his colleagues might be Sonia's killer. He needed to process this information. The ABA team, led by Eric Burette, returned to Nome to investigate Florence's testimony further. Eric informs the group about 2 policemen who were on duty at the station the night Sonia went missing, Matt Ons and Stan Ulker. At that point, both of whom had been with the Nome Police Department for 3 years. There were several people involved in the case, and everyone was required to go to the central office of Polly Angie for questioning and a lie detector test. However, something strange occurred. A couple of weeks after the crime, an officer discovered that a service car was missing. That same night, a search operation was launched. At 2:51, Matt called his colleagues to report that he had found the car in an abandoned area, near where the body was hidden. 2 minutes later, he called again, saying, "There were shots there." Several police officers rushed to the scene, but they found nothing unusual. Police found the missing car in a safe place, dark place. Matt admitted that he was terrified when he heard the shots and thought about his 4-year-old son possibly growing up without a father. He said that perhaps he was not cut out for police work. The officers inspected the stolen car and immediately noticed the broken window on the driver's side. Next, they saw an envelope on the driver's seat, amidst the glass shards. Inside the envelope was a letter, in which the stranger expressed his hatred for the police. They claimed that stealing the car was easy and that Sonia was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, implying that it was not her fault. The person mentioned that Sonia mistook him for a policeman. He warned them to be careful, saying that he was watching their every move. He threatens that if they leave him alone, he would leave them alone, but if they came too close, he would shoot them in the head. The unknown person not only left this threatening letter in the car but also included evidence in the envelope to remove any doubt that he was the one who killed Sonia. Along with the note, police found a membership card for the fitness center Sonia used to visit. How did the criminal steal the police car? It was later discovered that official cars were almost always unlocked, and the keys were often left in the ignition. Therefore, stealing the car is not difficult. Initially, two officers, Stan and Matt, were questioned. Their testimonies were almost identical. That evening, they were called to a domestic violence incident. The man who caused the incident attacked them, then he was arrested and taken to the police station. Stan stayed in the office to handle paperwork, while Matt patrolled the streets alone. This occurred between 1 o'clock and 1:30 a.m. Matt reported hearing gunshots, but he spent an hour trying to locate their source without success. His shift ended at 7 a.m., and he went home. Both officers, Stan and Matt, stated they did not see Sonia that night and were not involved in her death. Since their stories matched, a lie detector test was used to further investigate the incident. When asked, did they offer Sonia a ride on August 11, 2003? Both individuals answered no. They gave the same response when questioned about her murder. Further questions focused on Matt's sex life, leaving him confused. It seemed he didn't understand why these questions were being asked. At that time, Matt didn't know that Eric, the lead investigator, was also in the room and is keeping an eye on him. Eric had learned from colleagues that Matt was a typical person, although he didn't always follow the rules. Matt preferred night shifts and often volunteered for them. Occasionally, he invited friends to ride in the patrol car with him, despite repeated warnings from management not to do so. In March 2003, Matt was accused of using his squad car to meet women. He allegedly having sex with them while on duty. Unlike many who use Tinder and similar apps, he had his own method. He would drive slowly in the patrol car, approach women, and offer them rides. When confronted with these allegations, he denied them, and the investigation continued. The city discovered that Matt's personal life was troubled. In a custody battle in court, he is trying to sue his wife for custody of their 4-year-old son. The child currently lives with his mother, but the boy also visits his father, because his parents are separated. On the morning of August 12, Matt called his wife to say he couldn't pick up their son. Because he had to work on a missing girl case, which might take a long time. His wife confirmed this to the FBI. When asked if she was sure the phone conversation took place on August 12, she affirmed with certainty, because that day was her birthday. At that point, when Sonia had not yet been reported missing, then how could Matt know she was missing? On October 25, he was arrested and charged with Sonia's murder. This news didn't surprise everyone. 6 women reported to the police, accusing Matt of not only failing to maintain order and security on the streets but also posing a threat to many people. They felt relieved after his arrest. One woman claimed that when she was drunk, he detained and assaulted her in the squad car. She didn't report it immediately, fearing disbelief due to her intoxication. 2 other complaints were filed against him, but they were not properly addressed. Investigators have no evidence to prove Matt was involved in the murder. They don't know where Sonia's clothes are or where he hid the weapon. And they found nothing suspicious in the patrol cars. The detectives worried that their information wouldn't convince the jury of Matt's guilt. However, they were about another lead, a hunting camp about 30 kilometers from the city. He frequently visited this camp, and a witness saw him burning his gloves there. If true, he might have destroyed other evidence at the camp. At there, investigators thoroughly examined the ashes. Finally, they found an important piece of evidence, Burned shoes with laces bearing the imprint of the shoe manufacturer Schumacher. Sonia wore shoes of this brand. The ashes were collected and taken to Nome. Over several days, detectives searched for more evidence. They soon found several more pairs of shoes, parts of a bra, and a button inscribed with LT. Sonia's sister confirmed that the button belonged to Sonia's clothes. A mailbox key was found in the hallway, and it turned out to be the key to Matt's mailbox. Then, a police department employee suggested where the crime weapon might be. Investigators suspected the weapon could be a .22 caliber Jennings pistol, which was indeed found in the storage facility. According to the officers, Matt took it for his criminal activities and later returned it. Unfortunately, this could not be proven due to a lack of evidence. 2 months after Matt's arrest, Sonia's relatives and ABA employees encountered a new issue. He hired an experienced lawyer and was released on bail with his help. The residents of Nome were shocked that the killer was freely roaming their small town, but they were powerless to stop it. Matt's trial began on January 18, 2005, but after 40 hours of jury deliberations, the jury still failed to reach a verdict. The prosecution's evidence was not convincing, and Matt walked out of court again a free man. In the second trial, the prosecution presented evidence to the jury, including Florence's testimony about seeing Sonia get into a car labeled Nome Police Department, Matt's wife's testimony about Sonia's disappearance shortly before Sonia was officially reported missing. Traces of Sonia's clothing found along with the key to a box, and the murder weapon that was stolen and later returned. However, Matt's lawyers challenged all these points. They argued that Matt's wife had likely misremembered the date. They also contended that the traces of clothing and the gun were not connected to Sonia's murder. Because of this conflict, the jury could not reach a consensus on whether Matt was guilty or not, so he was acquitted at trial. This case has made the public extremely indignant. Many believe Matt was guilty of the crime, but he managed to escape justice. Investigator Eric, however, found a new lead. As astonishing as it seems, this is indeed what happened. Eric's neighbor said Charlotte, a friend of Matt's who was staying at his house, shared the news. It turns out Charlotte found a membership card in Matt's bedroom. If so, then this incident may be related to Sonia's murder. Eric asked the neighbor whether Charlotte told him about the discovery before or after the police car was found. It turned out Charlotte mentioned it before the theft. This confirmed Eric's suspicion that Matt stole the car himself to distract the investigation. But who found the patrol car? Matt stated that gunshots were heard 2 minutes after the car was located. That night, Matt left without his service weapon or flashlight. This raised the possibility that he might have planted Sonia's fitness club membership card on the front seat. Charlotte was called as a witness during the second court hearing and questioned again. When asked if she saw Sonia's card or wallet on Matt, she denied it. Despite being under oath, her answers didn't change. Investigators, however, suspected that she might be withholding such information. They were prepared and presented evidence in court of an earlier conversation between the officer and Charlotte. In that discussion, she admitted she had seen Sonia's ID or membership card along with other personal belongings. Charlotte eventually decided to testify in court. Her testimony proved to be crucial. Matt Ons was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 101 years in prison. This tragic incident has left a stain on the city, causing people to lose faith in law enforcement. Sonia's family chose to hold an open casket funeral, allowing everyone to approach and say their final goodbyes. However, justice prevailed, and Matt Ons received the punishment he truly deserved. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Joseph and Olga Connell. The Connell family lived in Wilmington, Delaware, USA, and had 3 children. However, then their parents divorced, which was a difficult experience for everyone. The children stayed with their mother, The eldest child was John, the middle child was Joseph, and the youngest was a girl named Kelly. During their childhood, they often quarreled over small things, but as they grew older, they became very close and found common ground. Their mother also began a relationship with another man who became like a second father to them. The family enjoyed a comfortable life in a quiet, affluent neighborhood. Joseph, the middle son, known as Joe, grew up to be an ambitious and enterprising young man. Although he is often overly meticulous and focused on business, he is also known for his cheerful personality. He has done well in his career. He co-owned a car service and a store with his best friend, Christopher. Their partnership thrived as they were both passionate about their business and focused on its growth. During this time, Joseph met Olga online, a young woman from Russia. Both were over 30 and had experienced heartache in previous relationships, so they were seeking love. They quickly connected due to their friendly and vibrant personalities, which made them likable to others. Joseph, who thought of himself as a lifelong bachelor, was surprised to meet such a beautiful blonde who changed his life and beliefs completely. They spent many hours texting and calling each other, and grew so close that Olga traveled from Siberia to the USA to meet him. Joseph was thrilled when they met in person. He was captivated by her beauty, and she appreciated his kind and gentle nature. Their mutual attraction led them to start dating, and their relationship developed quickly. Joseph's family quickly grew fond of Olga, as their son was completely smitten by her. She appeared gentle and shy, but beneath that exterior was a lively and ambitious woman capable of doing anything. The entire family adored her, believing she was the one who could finally help their son settle down. Joseph had promised to marry her, and soon after, they decided to plan their wedding. Problems in the relationship began at that moment. The first issue was the wedding ring. According to family tradition, the mother wanted to pass down her jewelry to her son, Joseph. However, the wedding ring had already been given to her daughter Kelly, who had married 10 years earlier. This ring was valuable, worth about $20,000 due to its diamond inlay. Joseph discreetly replaced the diamonds with cubic zirconia and gave the modified ring back to Kelly. He then took the diamonds and set them into a new engagement ring for Olga. He assumed that Olga and Kelly wouldn't notice the difference. No one intended to deceive Kelly. They meant to return everything eventually, but the process took longer than expected. Kelly eventually noticed the difference in the stones, which upset her. She confronted Joseph about it, and he became very upset as well. He felt that she was trying to break family traditions, which angered him. The wedding ceremony was held in the U.S. Virgin Islands. However, the groom's younger sister, Kelly, did not attend because she was upset with the couple and had to work that day. However, she sent Olga a few sarcastic messages about her wedding ring. At that time, Olga did not know what Joseph had done with that wedding ring. The wedding ring caused a lack of respect, greatly affecting their mood. Just a few weeks after the wedding, the young couple experienced constant arguments, especially after someone broke into their home while they were at work. The intruder stole a large amount of jewelry and family heirlooms. Fortunately, at that moment, the Connell family's diamond ring was on Olga's finger, so it was not taken. After Joseph discovered that someone had broken into his house, he contacted the police. Officers arrived to investigate the scene and search for the intruder. To the forensic scientists' surprise, there was no evidence to confirm that a robbery had actually taken place, raising suspicions that it might have been staged. Unfortunately, they would not be able to resolve this case, as a far more serious crime soon unfolded, involving Joseph and Olga. Joseph and Olga began their life together on the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean Sea, where they enjoyed their honeymoon a month after their wedding. They relished each other's company, the ocean, and the sun, engaging in activities like fishing, sailing on a yacht through the turquoise waters, and savoring delicious cuisine. With plenty of financial resources, they fulfilled every wish on their honeymoon. Upon returning home, they purchased a brand new Mercedes convertible worth over $100,000. Joseph can afford this luxury car because he is a co-owner of a fast-growing car company that brings in about $1 million in revenue each year. Olga, a former stock trader, was well-versed in finance and client relations. After marrying, she quickly joined Joseph's business as an administrator. With her attractive appearance, Russian accent, and friendly demeanor, she played a key role in growing the business. Everything seemed perfect until tragedy struck. On September 23, just 3 months after their wedding, gunshots rang out around 2 a.m. at Joseph and Olga's home in Wilmington. An eyewitness called emergency services to report a woman who had been shot near a condominium in the Dean CL residential complex. At that time, Olga was still alive. Medics arrived within minutes and provided first aid to her. She had sustained gunshot wounds and was bleeding. They rushed her to the hospital, but despite their efforts, Olga tragically died en route. While investigating the crime scene, police discovered another body nearby, Joseph, who had been shot in the back of the head and was already dead. The incident suggested that this was not a random robbery. It appeared that both Joseph and Olga had been deliberately attacked from behind. Detectives quickly pieced together the information that had been gathered by the police officers. They suspect that the previous robbery at Joseph and Olga's home may have had something to do with their tragic end. Although there were several witnesses and neighbors who heard gunfire, no one actually saw the shooting, which left investigators without clues new. Some witnesses mentioned hearing 2 men arguing loudly just before the shots were fired. The incident occurred right after Joseph and Olga returned from celebrating Olga's 39th birthday at a bar. They had spent the evening with friends and family, enjoying themselves until they felt tired. After midnight, they drove home in their convertible and parked near the condominium entrance, unaware that danger was waiting for them. Olga suffered multiple gunshot wounds to her face, with one bullet entering her cheek and exiting through the back of her head. Joseph was shot multiple times, including in the head, and was found lifeless in the bushes nearby. Meanwhile, Olga was fighting for her life and waiting for assistance. The police arrived while helping Olga, hoping she could provide a name or some clue about the attacker. However, she did not respond. Nearby, they discovered many spent cartridges, suggesting that there might have been multiple assailants. The cartridges came in different calibers, indicating various types of weapons were used. It was unlikely that a single criminal would use different pistols. In total, around 20 bullets had been fired, further implying that several attackers were involved and that they acted with confidence. The police quickly confirmed that the attack was not a robbery, as nothing was stolen. Joseph and Olga had a wallet with a large amount of cash, and Olga's bag containing a phone and other valuables was left nearby. She was also wearing an expensive wedding ring worth tens of thousands of dollars. After investigating the incident, the police determined that it was an ambush targeting there. They were deliberately attacked near their home and shot multiple times. They appeared to be a happy couple with no known conflicts. However, the motive for the attack remained unclear. Once the investigation started, detectives interviewed the relatives of Joseph and Olga. Joseph's mother and stepfather claimed that they had no enemies and that no one wanted to harm them. However, it was known that Joseph had a disagreement with his younger sister, Kelly, regarding the wedding ring, which came up during the questioning. Some suspected that Kelly might have killed They out of jealousy over the ring. Did she really hate her brother, Joseph, so much that she had to kill both him and her sister Olga-in-law in revenge? However, it was odd that Kelly was one of the first people to arrive at the crime scene, especially since she lived in another part of the area. She was visibly affected by the tragedy. She actively cooperated with investigators and looked forward to providing assistance. She opened up about her recent problems with Joseph, which she had been dealing with for about a month. She honestly told them the whole story and even showed them the angry text correspondence they had exchanged with each other and with Olga. The messages indicated that Olga suspected Kelly of the robbery, but she denied any involvement and claimed she was innocent in the attack on Joseph and Olga. Meanwhile, it was confirmed that the attacker was a man and had an accomplice. Detectives also discovered that Kelly had been fighting breast cancer for a long time, had recently undergone difficult treatment, and was in recovery. Given her condition, it seemed unlikely she had the physical strength to commit the crime. Despite this, the Armed Forces Police still considered Kelly a suspect, believing she might be involved due to a potential motive of greed. Throughout the interrogations, Kelly did not crack under pressure, yet she remained a suspect for a considerable time because of the apparent motive. At this point, detectives are also considering another theory, that the crime could have been motivated by jealousy. They considered whether one of Olga's or Joseph's ex-partners might have harbored resentment and sought revenge. Investigators looked into the former partners of both spouses, but none of them aroused suspicion. Olga had no relationships in the USA besides Joseph, making the possibility of an ex-boyfriend of hers from Russia coming to the United States to seek revenge unlikely. Contrary, Joseph maintained good relationships with his ex-girlfriends, and none wished him harm. They were both married and had no intentions of rekindling past relationships, leading detectives to dismiss this jealousy theory. Researchers have had difficulty finding a motive for the tragedy. Detectives began to consider other motives and searched for any enemies of Joseph and Olga. However, they were kind and friendly, and they had no involvement in any conflicts. Subsequently, they turned their attention to Kelly's husband, Gareth. They suspected he might have been persuaded by Kelly to commit a double murder. However, Gareth had a solid alibi. He also corroborated Kelly's statement that on the day of the murder, she had been feeling unwell and was recovering from an illness. The theory that Joseph and Olga's deaths were related to criminal activity has been skepticized, due to Joseph's reputation. Joseph made his money honestly and he and Olga will not engage in illegal activities. However, witnesses later confirmed that Joseph was secretly selling steroids. The sale of this drug was banned and he made huge profits from this. Joseph's business associate, Christopher River, was implicated in the crime. A close associate of Christopher revealed that he had often spoken negatively about Joseph, he even accusing Joseph of embezzlement. This stems from the fact that Joseph sold steroids through Joseph's joint store with him, and Joseph kept all the profits for himself. Detectives then visited Christopher, who had been Joseph's partner for over 10 years. They had built their business together from the ground up. They also very close and have been through many difficulties together. However, instead of feeling grief over the loss of his close friend and associate, he appeared surprisingly calm, as if the tragedy had no effect on him. He claimed that he had arranged to meet Joseph and Olga at a bar that night, but then he was unable to come due to work. Christopher also mentioned various rumors about Olga, including rumors of her ties to the Russian mafia. He also suggested that Joseph was not entirely honest and urged the police to explore various leads in their search for the killers. Although there were suspicions about Christopher's honesty, a thorough investigation was necessary. This led to the discovery of Joseph's connections to the criminal world, which were corroborated by several acquaintances. A couple of years before his marriage, Joseph had been imprisoned for illegal possession of weapons. The incident occurred in a bar where a fight broke out, and Joseph retrieved a shotgun from his pickup truck to threaten those involved. After his conviction, Joseph formed new relationships in prison and learned about the steroid trade from some fellow inmates. After his release, he began engaging in illegal medical drug trafficking, establishing himself as a well-known figure in this illicit business, alongside his primary occupation. It remained unclear whether these activities could have motivated the murder. Did Joseph have conflicts with anyone in this illicit trade? Is it possible that Russian mafia operating in the US were involved? Detectives need to quickly find the truth. They looked into some suspicious individuals and investigated a man named Harry Cook, who was interested in partnering with Joseph in an auto shop. By the time of Joseph and Olga's deaths, Harry had invested over $100,000 into the business. This could also be the motive for the attack. Additionally, Harry lived near Wilmington, but he had a solid alibi for the time of the incident. Consequently, the police hit a dead end and continued to investigate Christopher, suspecting that he might have been stealing money from Joseph. The investigation into the store's financial records revealed that, despite a high income, but Christopher was experiencing big losses. His expenses were skyrocketing, which raised suspicions of theft. It became clear that someone was stealing money, and it was eventually discovered that Christopher was the culprit. As law enforcement looked into the missing funds, they learned that Christopher was struggling with opioid addiction. He was using his earnings to fund his drug habit, and his income was no longer sufficient to cover his expenses. Consequently, he resorted to stealing from the store, which was effectively stealing from Joseph, to support his addiction. Christopher's addiction had spiraled out of control. He was consuming large quantities of illegal drugs and was desperate for money. He had already incurred significant debts and was stealing from anyone he could. Additionally, he began exhibiting paranoid behavior. He claiming that the armed forces were after him and trying to kill him. His attempts to cover up his crimes only drew more attention from the police. At this point, the police were becoming suspicious of his alibi. Christopher willingly shared CCTV footage with detectives, shows he was at his home at the time of the incident. The police verified that the timestamps on the recordings were accurate, but they still doubted his story and sensed something was off. They then examined Christopher's mobile phone. On the night of the murder, he made significantly more calls than usual, with many occurring around the same time as the attack on Joseph and Olga. Although the call log had been deleted from his phone, law enforcement was able to recover it easily. On the night of the incident, Christopher called some friends named Dominique and Aaron, people who may have been involved in the case. It seems that he was under the influence of illegal substances and wanted to kill Joseph and Olga. Rather than committing the act himself, he hired Dominique and Aaron to carry it out. The case is getting more and more complicated. If the murder had gone as planned, business associate of Joseph, Christopher, would have received $1 million from Joseph's life insurance. When they first started their business, they had a similar insurance policy. If a Joseph died, Christopher can receive a large sum of money, enough to solve all his problems and pay off all his debts. However, he could not access this money because Joseph had married. Following the murder, Joseph's wife, Olga, would receive the full insurance payout, leaving Christopher with nothing. Therefore, he felt he needed to eliminate both Joseph and Olga to be able to get all of this money. This theory is reinforced by conversations between Christopher and two accomplices, Dominique and Aaron, on the night of the murder. Christopher frequently asks them when they will return home, which shows that he is very worried about the success of the attack plan. The responses he received were unclear. Detectives quickly seized 4 mobile phones belonging to all suspects involved in the double murder, Christopher, Dominique, and Aaron. They analyzed the phones using cell tower data, confirming that on September 23, 2013, Dominique and Aaron were near the Joseph's house. The main culprits, Dominique and Aaron, were seen on surveillance cameras which Christopher presented to validate his alibi. However, video from surveillance cameras has evidence that does not support Christopher. It revealed the unusual behavior of he appeared restless as he paced around the apartment, worrying without letting go of the phone. At that moment, he was clearly awaiting a response from Dominique and Aaron. Notably, then Dominique was of great assistance to the investigation, he confessing during police questioning and agreeing to a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. He stated that Christopher had asked him to kill Joseph and Olga. Christopher had initially provided a $5,000 deposit, then promised an additional $60,000 once Joseph and Olga were dead. As part of a plea deal with the prosecution, Dominique testified against Christopher in court. A year after the brutal massacre, Christopher was charged with conspiracy to commit double murder, Joseph and Olga. Aaron also appeared in court. The hearing started 19 months after the investigation began. Although Christopher had a detailed plan, it ultimately failed. He hoped that the investigation would become confusing and not go in the right direction. He suggested several explanations, including Joseph's involvement in illegal steroid sales, robberies that happened just before the tragedy, and a feud with Kelly. Christopher thought these ideas might distract the police, allowing them to arrest someone else. Fortunately, law enforcement did not fall for his tactics and uncovered the real killers. The police proved that the robbery at Joseph's house before the murder was staged on Christopher's orders. They entered the house to find and steal an engagement ring. If successful, investigators would likely have considered Joseph's younger sister, Kelly, the main suspect in the murder. However, the ring was not stolen, resulting in Christopher's plan failing. During the trials of the criminals, Baron Thompson has confessed to the murders of Joseph and Olga and received a sentence of 45 years. Evidence showed that he was the one who fired the gun. Christopher Rivers, who instigated the crime, was sentenced to 2 life terms plus an additional 50 years. His accomplice, Dominique Benson, was convicted of conspiracy in abetting, receiving a 5-year prison sentence. In this case, Joseph's younger sister, Kelly, has been hurt a lot. Initially, the police pressured her, attempting to falsely accuse her of murdering her own brother, Joseph, putting her at risk of imprisonment despite her innocence. Although she felt upset about her mother and brother's actions regarding the wedding ring, but those issues are just minor controversies. During the funeral, Kelly expressed her deep love for her brother and grieved the significant loss. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Laura Day. Laura Day was born in 1965 and lived in Orange, California at the age of 17. At the time, she was dating a 21-year-old college student named James Kendall. Although their relationship seemed to be going well, there was a problem. James was seeing other girls. Laura found out about this and instead of ending the relationship, she decided to take revenge while hiding her true feelings. On May 11, 1982, James drove Laura home to Laguna Beach. After getting out of the pickup, she took a pistol from her car and shot James in the chest before shooting herself. James died at the scene, while Laura was shot in the shoulder and survived. Neighbors who heard the gunshots called 911, and emergency services arrived quickly. James died and Laura was taken to the hospital for treatment of her injuries. Initially, the police thought that a robbery might have taken place, based on Laura's story. However, they quickly doubted this idea when they found no signs of theft at the crime scene. The police discovered a note left by Laura on a jeweler's business card, stating that she had intended to kill her boyfriend and then end her life, to escape responsibility for her actions. In reality, she was unable to carry out her plan to end her life. Instead, she shot herself in the shoulder to make it look like an attack on the couple. This is why she changed her story after she recovered. Laura was brought in for questioning by police. During the interview, her story changed several times. She tried to convince them that she was the victim of a robbery, but her testimony was confusing. She struggled to explain why she wrote a particular note or why James was shot with her gun. Eventually, under pressure, Laura confessed that she had committed the crime out of desperation, claiming that she had been a victim of violence and feared for her life. She described James as a cruel man who had abused her on a regular basis and had been having affairs with other girls, which had left her suffering. As the investigation continued, more details emerged. James had not only dated other girls, but had also intended to end their relationship. On the day of the murder, he had informed Laura of this. It seemed that she had anticipated this outcome. She had brought a gun, written a note, and shot him as part of her revenge plan. Laura was possessive and did not want to share him with anyone. After Laura was convicted of second-degree murder, she was sentenced to the California Department of Juvenile Welfare. While this option may seem milder than a typical adult prison sentence, being surrounded by other teenagers posed significant risks for her. Despite experiencing a few assaults, her time there was generally uneventful. Fortunately, Laura was released in 1987 after serving 5 years. While incarcerated, she pursued her education and earned a degree in psychology. After her release, it seemed that Laura had learned valuable lessons about discipline and reintegration into society. At first, this was true. In the early 1990s, she moved to Baltimore and worked as a nurse at a hospital. During this time, she also got married. However, she found the job too difficult and stressful, and the salary did not meet her expectations, leading her to quit and get a divorce. Club dancer, a job that suited her well. She earned good money with minimal effort and attracted a lot of attention due to her beauty. With many fans showering her with gifts, she became quite popular. However, her personal life was tumultuous. She got married twice more, but she did not get divorced after the first marriage and immediately entered into the second one. The competent authorities found out about this, and a case was opened against her. This led to a new trial in 1993. She faced charges, and the police suspected she was married to a third man as well. Ultimately, she received a 6-month suspended sentence. Unfortunately, this punishment did not deter her. Her reckless lifestyle continued to lead her into trouble. Just 2 years later, Laura was arrested again, this time for using a firearm. She shot up her own car and attempted to stage it as an accident. In an attempt to obtain insurance fraudulently, the scheme was uncovered. Additionally, the girl had stolen various items, including a ring valued at about $3,000. During the investigation, it was found that she had stolen everything from her neighbors. For her crimes of fraud and theft, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. However, she only served 6 months before her sentence was overturned, and she was released. In 1997, Laura relocated to Corpus Christi, Texas, a city located on the Gulf Coast in the southern part of the state. During this time, she resumed her previous work as a dancer and became a well-known bikini model. She also expanded her activities by selling explicit images and adult content, which proved to be quite profitable. With her earnings, Laura was able to purchase a mansion by the ocean, fulfilling a lifelong dream. The woman remained dedicated to her ambitions and continuously pursued her happiness. During this time, she met a British man named Fieldy, and their romance blossomed quickly, leading to marriage. They soon welcomed a son, Cameron. Friends observed that she was a devoted mother who took Cameron to football games. Other mothers were wary of her, fearing she might attract their husbands. This concern was not entirely baseless. Although Laura and Fieldy's married life appeared happy, it was not as it seemed. Their family happiness was short-lived, and the marriage ended in the summer of 2011. At that time, Laura was working as a sales representative when she unexpectedly met a truck driver named David, who was 12 years younger than her. Laura's striking beauty caught the attention of all the men at her workplace. When Laura meets David, they begin talking and discover that both are unhappy in their marriages. David is married to Kelly, while Laura is bored with her boring husband, Fieldy. They begin to communicate regularly. Later, David informs Kelly that he is in love with someone else, which shocks her. Kelly accepts the situation and agrees to a divorce without trying to stop David's new relationship. Both Laura and David filed for divorce and soon moved in together. The couple spent most of their time together, with David's son, Taylor Searing, sometimes staying with them. Kelly, the boy's mother, was very wary of Laura, the woman who had broken up her marriage, and did not trust her. In order to build a relationship with Taylor and Kelly, Laura planned fun weekend activities for David and Taylor, such as baking cookies, going to the movies, and shopping. Through these efforts, Laura was able to bond with Taylor and improve her relationship with Kelly, David's ex-wife. Laura was very happy in her new marriage with David. They got married in August 2012 in Las Vegas. After the wedding, they moved into Laura's luxurious mansion, which had a large swimming pool. David worked as a truck driver and was often away from home, while Laura, who was not working at the time, enjoyed her days at home, enjoying her comfortable life. A tragic event occurred unexpectedly. On Friday, October 5, 2012, Laura picked Taylor up from school so he could spend the week with his father David. Laura had arranged this with his biological mother Kelly, who agreed to let her son stay with his father and spend time with him. On the way home, Taylor asked Laura if they could have a picnic at the beach. Laura agreed but wanted to feed the boy first, so they stopped at McDonald's for a snack. After lunch, they went home to pick up their clothes and beach gear before heading to the beach. However, when they arrived at the nearest beach, they found it very crowded. The parking lot was full and there were many people on the beach, making it noisy. Laura was surprised by the crowd, as it was still a weekday and not many people usually went to the beach at that time. Laura decided to drive further until she found a quieter, more suitable place. After choosing a good spot, they stopped and Laura let the child swim in the water. Normally, the boy wore a special life jacket, but that day he could not use it because his neck was injured and his collar was irritated. To avoid causing discomfort to the tailor, Laura decided to let him swim without a life jacket, as she believed it was safe. She watched him for a few minutes and was pleased with how well Taylor swam. He always practiced in the pool at her house. Feeling reassured, she let him swim without a life jacket. At first, everything went smoothly as she watched him from the shore. However, after only a few minutes, something pulled the boy under the water and he disappeared from sight. Taylor sank and did not come up to the surface. Laura noticed the situation, felt scared and jumped into the water to look for the boy. She searched for the boy but couldn't find him. Just a few feet from where he had sunk, he floated to the surface and began to drift with the waves. Laura spotted Taylor, swam to him and yelled to try to wake him, but he was unresponsive. She pulled him to shore, but he wasn't breathing and showed no signs of life. She tried to remove the water from his lungs, but in her panic she couldn't perform CPR, even though she knew how. She called 911 for help, but the doctors told her it would take too long to get there because the resort was far from the city. Realizing this, Laura decided to take matters into her own hands. She put the boy in the car, got in the driver's seat, and drove herself to the hospital. Laura quickly delivered Taylor to the hospital after covering about 20 kilometers in just 30 minutes. She was screaming for help as she arrived. Despite efforts to resuscitate him, it was too late, and Taylor was pronounced dead. He had already turned blue, and medical staff confirmed his death. The doctors reported the incident to the police as part of standard procedure. The police contacted David at work to inform him of the tragic news. He immediately rushed to the hospital. Police also informed Kelly of the tragedy, and she hurried to the hospital to gather more information. Upon her arrival, Kelly learned only that her son had drowned. The doctors could not provide further details. Laura stood nearby and revealed that she had not told anyone about taking Taylor to the beach and had decided to go at his request. She described the situation as a tragic accident. Kelly begins screaming in the hospital, accusing Laura of causing her son's death. Laura appears emotionless. showing that she does not care. The child's father, David, blames Kelly for not taking care of their son. To everyone's surprise, it is revealed that the boy was with Laura at the beach at the time of the incident. Kelly was especially upset that Laura had allowed the boy to swim without a life jacket, despite the strong waves that could be dangerous even for adults. The waves were indeed powerful, and there was a dangerous undercurrent that could easily sweep away a child or even an adult. Every responsible adult understands the risks of allowing children to swim in such conditions, so Kelly was left wondering why Laura had acted so recklessly. This negligence ultimately led to the tragic death of the child. The police continued their investigation and began to notice inconsistencies in Laura's account. First, they discovered that the hospital she chose was not the closest to the beach. The child could have been taken to a nearer hospital or to a fire station, where help was readily available. Laura claimed she hadn't considered the fire station, suggesting that panic might have clouded her judgment. Second, the police found it hard to believe that Laura, who had taken a nursing course and worked in a hospital, couldn't administer first aid to the boy. The operator had provided her with phone instructions that even a beginner could follow, and she should have been able to manage the situation. Instead, she chose to drive to a hospital 30 minutes away, despite knowing that brain damage can occur within 5 minutes without oxygen. Her decision seemed illogical under the circumstances. This situation raised many questions about Laura. Laura, David, and the child's mother, Kelly, were taken to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Laura displayed no emotion, showing no signs of regret for what had happened. She kept her head down and avoided making eye contact with the police while answering their questions. Her statements were confusing and lacked detail, revealing that her entire account was fabricated. When asked how deep the boy had gone when he disappeared under the water, she simply said he was cute and claimed he had been swept away by a wave, insisting it all happened very quickly. Her behavior was highly suspicious. The Kelly was heartbroken over the loss of her son and blamed Laura for not watching him. David was also deeply affected by the tragedy, and the tension between the parents intensified the sorrow. The loss of her son was devastating for Kelly, as he meant everything to her. It was revealed that Taylor's father wanted full custody of him, wanting to ensure they would always be together. David was actively working with lawyers to achieve this. The police considered this a possible motive for the murder. Laura, who was possessive and had previously given her son to her ex-husband to focus on her personal life, likely did not support her David's desire for full custody. She may have felt that the boy was a threat to her relationship with David and decided to remove that threat. The police further explored David's relationship with Laura by asking him about it. He responded that they seemed to get along well, at least from his perspective. However, he soon began searching for information about his wife online and uncovered troubling details about her past. She had shot her boyfriend, faced accusations of bigamy, and was involved in fraud, theft, and adult content. This revelation shocked him, making it feel as if he was learning about a completely different person. Unable to cope with the information, he confronted Laura, who reassured him that her past was not dangerous or malicious. She explained that her boyfriend had abused her, and she had acted in self-defense. Trusting her words, David decided not to take any action, believing she posed no threat. Consequently, he continued to leave her alone with their son, a decision that ultimately led to the Taylor's tragic death. Police reviewed Laura's extensive criminal history and were shocked. A woman with a past of murder might be capable of repeating such an act. After considering all aspects of the case, police concluded that her actions indicated a willful disregard for the child's safety and criminal negligence. Initially, she failed to inform her parents about her plans, which she should have done to seek their permission. Instead of stopping at a busy public beach, she chose a deserted area. She allowed her son to swim without a life jacket and did not keep an eye on him. when she eventually retrieved him from the water. She was unable to perform basic first aid and instead went to the hospital, which severely compromised the child's chances of survival. Given her medical training, she was fully aware of this. Laura Day was arrested and charged with capital murder. The investigation was ongoing. Meanwhile, a large-scale experiment was conducted using a dummy that matched the deceased child's parameters. However, the experiment did not yield the expected results. The body did not surface as Laura had claimed. This raised doubts about her story. Less than 24 hours after her arrest, she posted $50,000 bail for her release. She was released with restrictions, including a prohibition on being in places where children gather, as she was deemed a potential threat to their safety. At that time, her husband still believed in Laura's innocence and stood by her side. He was deeply affected by the tragedy and was considering moving to Florida with her once the charges were dropped, viewing the situation as a misunderstanding. Despite being restricted from leaving, Laura, the main suspect, acted as if nothing had happened. Just a few days later, she went shopping at a mall, attempting to disguise herself with a wig, but a police officer recognized her, and she could no longer escape scrutiny. On December 4, 2012, she was arrested again for violating her bail conditions. Laura maintained her innocence regarding all charges. The police were conducting a thorough investigation, gathering evidence piece by piece. A witness emerged, stating that there was no panic or urgency to save the boy that day. According to him, Laura calmly took the boy and left the beach with a satisfied expression, even waving goodbye and smiling cheerfully. In January 2013, at the trial, the main piece of evidence against Laura in Taylor's murder was the testimony of a witness. The witness described seeing a woman, presumably Laura, leaving the scene looking content and happy, rather than panicked and anxious. The prosecution argued that Laura's unusual decision to deviate from her usual routine of picking up her son with her husband showed that she had planned ahead. Taking the boy away from his mother earlier under the pretext of spending more time with his father, despite the fact that his father was at work and not present. Laura did not inform anyone about going to the beach. Instead, she chose a secluded spot where there weren't any people around and sent Taylor into the water without a life jacket, seemingly waiting for him to drown in the strong waves. After he was in trouble, she slowly pulled him out, confirmed he wasn't breathing, and failed to attempt any life-saving measures. Instead of waiting for the ambulance, which may have arrived before her, she drove to a distant hospital, wasting the precious final minutes of the child's life. It was only due to a witness who accidentally arrived at the beach while she was leaving and testified against her that Laura was held accountable for her actions. During the trial, several witnesses pointed to inconsistencies in Laura's testimony. For example, she initially mentioned that she and Taylor had stopped by the house to pick up their swimsuits before heading to the beach. However, it was later revealed that she had brought all of her swimsuits, suggesting that she had prepared for the trip in advance. This raised doubts about how she could have anticipated that the boy would invite her to the beach. Additionally, her decision to remove the boy's life jacket was unusual, as he usually swam with it on. Her explanation for this decision seemed implausible, and there were no signs of irritation or injury to Taylor's skin. It became clear that the boy had swum far from the shore, creating a safety risk even though he had the necessary skills. Laura, despite having basic first aid knowledge from her hospital experience, was unable to help the boy. This inability raised doubts about her intentions and whether her actions contributed to the child's death. The mistrust of Laura stemmed from her past conviction for murder and her history of appearing in crime reports. The prosecution argued that she had not learned from her time in prison, suggesting that jealousy, which motivated her previous crime, may have influenced her actions toward the Taylor. The prosecutor suggested that jealousy over the boy was a motive for Laura's actions, arguing that she wanted her husband to focus all his attention on her rather than on his son. This was described as a cruel and selfish act driven by her possessiveness. In contrast, the defense pointed out that no one witnessed the boy's death, making it impossible to know exactly what happened and casting doubt on the prosecution's claims. A witness only saw Laura and the boy leaving the beach, and the autopsy revealed no signs of violent death on Taylor's body, suggesting that Laura did not drown him. Statistics indicate that approximately 800 children and teenagers in the United States die each year due to accidental drowning. The prosecution made a significant point about Laura's inability to perform first aid, which strengthened their case against her. Laura exhibited unusual behavior. She was anxious about being alone and often sought attention through her dramatic appearance. She was very impulsive and viewed other women as competition, which resulted in her having no female friends. Laura showed signs of extreme fear of being alone, both during and after the trial. At times, Laura perceived Kelly as a threat. Despite facing the possibility of life in prison, Laura did not appear overly concerned about her future. At one point, she asked her husband, David, if he loved her more than his ex-wife Kelly, which seemed inappropriate in such a situation. Laura seemed obsessed with being the central figure in David's life, viewing the child as a rival. While the child was alive, it would have been a link between Kelly and David, which may have hindered Laura's ambitions. This obsessive thinking may have led her to rationalize her choice to eliminate the child as a form of self-defense. In her mind, she was protecting her relationship with David. At first, David stood by his wife, Laura. However, as the investigation progressed and new evidence emerged, he came to believe that Laura intentionally killed their child. This realization prompted him to file for divorce, resulting in the end of their marriage. In June 2013, Laura Day was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Despite her conviction, Laura continues to assert her innocence. Although the prosecution presented strong arguments, the lack of direct evidence against her led some to question the court's decisions. Currently, even in prison, Laura remains hopeful. She has found a new partner during her incarceration and has begun a new relationship. Despite knowing she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Carly McBride. Carly McBride was born on April 14, 1983, to Steve McBride and Lorraine. As a child, she was cheerful and outgoing, sharing a close bond with her parents. However, as an adult, Carly began to experience many difficulties, which led to her abusing alcohol and drugs. Despite these challenges, she worked hard to overcome her addictions. By 2014, Carly was 31 years old and living in Belmont, New South Wales, Australia. She was a mother to two children, William, who was 7, and Cadence, who was 3. The children's fathers were different men. It is known that Andrew Easton, the father of Cadence, was one of the last people to see Carly. In 2013, Carly entered a rehab center to get rid of her addiction. During her time there, she met Sale Kenneth Newson, and their friendship gradually developed into a deeper relationship. Starting in August 2014, Carly and Sale spent nearly all their time together. Although they occasionally had arguments, they appeared happy overall. On September 30, 2014, Sale took Carly to Musselburgh to visit her 3-year-old daughter, Cadence, who lived with her father, Andrew Easton. Carly visited Cadence for a few hours, entering Andrew's house around 12:30 p.m. Sale did not stay with her, but they agreed that he would return in a few hours. However, when Sale arrived to pick up Carly, she was missing. Carly's ex-husband, Andrew, mentioned they had a fight, which led Carly to leave. She intended to walk to the nearest McDonald's, about a 20-minute walk from Andrew's house. Sale, confused as to why Carly hadn't called to inform him of her whereabouts, he began trying to reach her by phone. After several unsuccessful attempts, he decided to drive to McDonald's, hoping to find her there. During the drive, he looked around in case Carly was waiting somewhere along the way. He thought it was possible her phone had died, but Carly was not at McDonald's or anywhere nearby. Sale drove around the streets of Musselbrook for a while, but he couldn't find Carly. When she didn't come home to Belmont that evening, he contacted the police. The detectives asked him to describe what had happened. Sale explained that he would drop Carly off, and she would walk to the front door with her daughter, turn around, and wave goodbye. He mentioned that she would usually call him twice and send him 2 texts during each visit to let him know she was okay. However, he noted that on that day, he dropped her off around 12:30 p.m., and everything felt different. He did not hear from her again at all. He texted and called her, but the phone kept ringing, and she didn't answer it. Sale arrived at Carly's ex-husband, Andrew's house around 4:30 p.m., as he usually did, to pick up she. However, Andrew told him that she had left after an argument at around 2 p.m. and walked toward a McDonald's about a mile away. This raised an important question: did Carly really leave Andrew's house, or was he withholding information? Andrew claimed to be the last person to see her, but there were no other witnesses to confirm that Carly left. The police spoke with neighbors and others along the route she might have taken to McDonald's, but since no one saw her, suspicion about Andrew increases. There are no surveillance cameras near Andrew's house that could verify his statement about Carly leaving at around 2 p.m. Investigators also reviewed footage from surveillance cameras at McDonald's but found no evidence that she had been there. The police conducted searches in fields behind a nearby residential area for clues, but the chief investigator stated that nothing lead had been discovered. The investigation will continue, and the police are asking anyone with information about Carly McBride's disappearance to come forward. She was last seen in blue jeans, sandals, and a yellow t-shirt, carrying a tan handbag. After getting a search warrant, the police searched the house Andrew, where Carly was last seen. A team of officers hoped to find clues about the disappearance of she. However, their search of Andrew's house revealed no new evidence. There was no sign that anyone had committed a crime in that house. Despite this, investigators found something concerning. Carly's Facebook account was deleted just hours after she went missing, before an official report was filed. This deletion sparked many questions. Are Carly's account deletion and her disappearance related? Did she delete her account herself, or did someone else do it? What was the reason for the account deletion? The Facebook messages might hold clues about what happened, which could explain why the account was removed. To find answers, detectives reached out to the U.S. Department of Justice, seeking assistance to recover Carly's account and identify who deleted it. Although Facebook data analysis is conducted at their headquarters in Menlo Park, California, Sergeant Wright mentioned that Carly's Facebook friends could also provide useful information. The New South Wales police are asking if anyone had contact with Carly on Facebook or other social media platforms in the days before her disappearance. They are looking for anyone who noticed something unusual and are encouraging them to come forward with information. Carly's parents doubted that she simply ran away to start a new life. Her close friend and roommate, Kylie Smith, mentioned that everything seemed normal when she spoke with Carly on the phone while on her way to Musselbrook. Kylie described Carly as very relatable and a free spirit. She was easygoing and loved life. She was always supportive of her friends. If someone was having a tough day, she could sense it and reach out. Kylie said that, every day they wake up not knowing what happened or where Carly is. Please, have some conscience and come forward with any information. They just need something to hold on to. The police conducted a comprehensive search of the area where Carly was last seen before she disappeared. This search involved search dogs, police divers checking the Hunter River and nearby locations, as well as aerial surveillance and patrols on trail bikes. Unfortunately, this did not lead to any clues as to Carly's whereabouts. As months went by, the investigation yielded no results. Carly left no traces after her disappearance. She did not turn on her phone, her social media accounts remained inactive, and she did not use any bank cards. Investigators started to fear that Carly may no longer be alive. 9 months after Carly went missing, her parents asked for help in locating their daughter. They were assisted by Detective Timothy Seymour, who could gather any information that might aid the investigation. Carly's mother, Lorraine, wept during the public appeal and begged for help to find her beloved daughter. She urged that if anyone knew anything, no matter how small, they should come forward and help family her. Detective Inspector Timothy Seymour stated that officers had been working hard since Carly went missing. He explained that they had a lot of information to review but were still asking for help. He also said that important information can come from a person, even if they think what they know is unimportant. As time passed, Carly's parents began to accept that they might never see their daughter alive again. Lorraine wrote a touching letter to the man who took her daughter from her. "I believe everyone knows what happened to my girl or has seen the events of that tragic day. Please help us for her children. They are innocent and beautiful babies. Whoever you are, you have taken their mother away, their source of joy and happiness, their pillar of strength." Lorraine wrote a heartfelt letter to the man who kidnapped Carly. In her letter, she stressed that, no matter who he was, he had removed their mother from their lives, which took away their joy, happiness. They will never experience Carly's gentle, warm kisses or her comforting hugs, or see her bright smile. Their cherished memories are gone, and they cannot say goodbye to her. Lorraine speaks that sorrow, anger, and frustration weighed heavily on them. After failing to find Andrew's involvement in Carly's disappearance, the police begin investigating another suspect, Sale Newson. They discovered that Carly and Sale's relationship was troubled, primarily due to Sale's jealousy, which often led to arguments. Although they have only been together for a relatively short time, but Sale insists that he loves Carly very much, saying that she is the first woman he has truly loved in 14 years. He urgently sought information about Carly's disappearance, helped create a Facebook page, offered rewards, and approached people in the area where she was last seen. Despite publicly expressing his love for Carly, but Sale quickly began intimate relationships with other women. Just hours after reporting Carly missing, he propositioned several women for sex. Carly went missing on September 30th, but by October 2nd, and Sale was spending the night with another woman. Yet publicly, he portrayed himself as a heartbroken individual mourning the loss of his girlfriend. Detectives found out that Sale and Carly had a disagreement 2 days before she went missing. The argument was about Facebook messages that Carly received from other men. However, this information was only circumstantial evidence, and they needed more direct evidence to file any charges against Sale Newson. In April 2015, authorities conducted searches at 3 locations, 1 in Muswellbrook and 2 in Scone, a town in the Upper Hunter Shire of New South Wales, Australia. Scone is located approximately 15 miles from Muswellbrook. During these searches, police confiscated 3 firearms and a quantity of illegal substances, leading to the arrest of a 24-year-old man named James Anthony Canine. Although the police stated that these charges were not connected to the ongoing investigation into Carly's disappearance, they surfaced during the investigation. Therefore, it's important to remember this name. Almost 2 years had passed since Carly was last seen alive, and the police were still investigating her case without any new leads. However, on August 7, 2016, there was a lead new. In a rural area near Scone, 2 local pedestrians discovered remains in a shallow grave just a few feet off the road. Forensic analysis confirmed that these remains belonged to Carly McBride, a mother of 2 from Belmont who had disappeared on September 30, 2014, in Muswellbrook. Police delayed announcing the discovery of her body for 4 days in the hope of gathering more evidence. Superintendent Guyana emphasized that the police do not think Carly, 31, was taken from the street by a stranger. He stated that this was not a random act, and they were investigating her past and reaching out to as many people as possible. He refrained from naming any suspects, noting that the investigation was still in its early stages. Superintendent Guyana said that they have worked hard on this case over the past 2 years and the team is eager to find answers for Carly's family, added that they still have a lot of new information to process, and the case is still making good progress. Carly's parents have been desperately searching for information about their daughter's case. Lorraine has asked anyone who knows anything to come forward, as they want to find out who is responsible for her death. Finding Carly's body has given them some sense of closure. They are very grateful for the support from law enforcement and the community throughout the search. After 10 months of diligent investigation, a warrant was issued for Sale Newson's arrest on June 19, 2017. He has since been arrested and is in custody, but he denies any involvement in Carly's death. However, Sale was not the only person facing charges. Police suspect that 26-year-old James assisted Sale in disposing of Carly's body. Sale and James met at a rehabilitation center for individuals struggling with alcohol and substance abuse. Although they left the center at different times and for different reasons, they maintained contact afterward. Sale Newson's trial started in August 2018 and extended over several years due to the police only having circumstantial evidence. Prosecutors claimed that Sale met Carly after she left Andrew's house, attacked her in a fit of jealousy, and then disposed of her body. Forensic experts concluded that Carly died from multiple blunt force trauma, which included 23 skull fractures, 13 torso fractures, and injuries to her spine and ribs. The judge pointed out that Sale had claimed to the police that he was an experienced mixed martial arts fighter, boasting that he had had 20 fights and had won them all, and that he had trained with world champions. The judge determined that the cause of death was severe brain trauma resulting from significant force applied to Carly's head, concluding that he was convinced Sale had caused her death using his fists, feet, or potentially both, as well as objects. During their search of Sale's house, police discovered a map inside a shoebox under the bed. The map featured a circle drawn around the towns of Musselbrook and Scone, with Carly's remains located precisely within that area. Additionally, the map displayed the numbers 1, 2, and 3, which pointed to locations outside Musselbrook. Senior Constable Mohini confirmed that the first 2 numbers indicated the positions of cameras. After police discovered Carly's remains in 2016, Sale called her father, Steve. In their conversation, he revealed that the skeleton found was missing hand bones, a detail that the police had not shared with the public. Only a small group, Carly's parents, the police, and the Department of Forensic Medicine at John Hunter Hospital, were aware of this information. Authorities suspected that Sale was aware of this detail because he had intimate knowledge of the crime scene and was responsible for leaving Carly's body there, which was discovered 2 years later. Additionally, the clothes found on Carly's remains were the same as those she wore when she disappeared, indicating that she likely died soon after leaving Andrew's house. The police were unable to locate her purse and phone. When they examined Sale's mobile phone, they found that he had deleted Google location data for the period between September 18 and October 2, 2014. During the trial, investigators discovered that a photo of Carly, taken by Sale while he was traveling to Musselbrook, had been edited and cropped before the police were notified of her disappearance. When the search for Carly started, Sale promised a $20,000 reward for information about her location, but his bank account indicated he was broke. This suggested that he made the offer knowing that no one would find her, so he wouldn't have to actually pay the reward. From the beginning, Sale also tried to involve himself in the police investigation to shift suspicion away from himself onto others. While police and emergency services were gathering information, Sale also searched the surrounding streets for security camera footage or witnesses. However, the police stated that this search sales was not meant to gather information, but rather to cover up details and see if anyone had witnessed him met with Carly. As volunteers and police organized their search around Musselbrook and distributed Carly flyers, Sale was in Sydney texting friends about driving an Audi R8. He claimed to be very familiar with the area where Carly was discovered and even described it to her father, Steve, despite only having seen footage of a staged crime scene set up by the police. The images show a staged crime scene created by the police to observe Sale's reaction. As investigators conducted interviews, reviewed his Facebook messages, and listened to his phone calls, they found more evidence against him. They discovered that Sale had searched online for how to delete a Facebook account. Although his account remained active, Carly's account was deleted shortly afterward. Although the initial evidence was circumstantial, but the prosecutor noted that when the clues were put together, they started to form a clearer picture of the case. Ultimately, these pieces of evidence built a strong case that eliminated other explanations for Carly's disappearance and the discovery of her body, which was about 82 feet from the roadside. The judge determined that the motive behind the violent and impulsive attack on Carly was jealousy stemming from annoyance. After picking Carly up from Musselbrook, he learned that she had spent around 90 minutes with Andrew instead of with her daughter, as they had intended. Carly's daughter was not at home during that time, and the fact that Carly was alone with Andrew for an hour and a half led Sale to attack her in a fit of jealousy. Carly's mother, Lorraine, said at the sentencing hearing that she had spent the past 2 years filled with sadness and anxiety. She longed for her daughter, who was always full of life and loved to return home to her 2 young children. Unfortunately, she said that the next time she saw Carly was in the morgue, a day she described as the worst day of her life. Lorraine mentioned that Carly should be living her life with her children, her sister, her father, and her. She added that after that day, she never wanted to hear, speak, or see the man who took her beautiful daughter's life again, and that she refused to think about him anymore. Lorraine stated that she would miss Carly every second of every day for the rest of her life. Nearly 7 years after reporting Carly missing, 43-year-old Sale Newson was found guilty in December 2021. He received a sentence of 27 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 2038. After the sentencing, Sale addressed the judge to reaffirm his innocence. Sale said that he understood the verdict had been issued. He addressed the judge, asserting that he was innocent, and from the day he reported Carly missing up to that moment, he had fully cooperated with the police, the courts, and the jails. He had been convicted of a crime he did not commit and that someone else was responsible for the crime, not him. Sale also said he now faces a huge challenge in proving his innocence in court. James, who assisted Sale in disposing of Carly's body, claimed he was not guilty. However, in July 2022, a jury convicted him. The judge stated that James had lied to police during 3 interrogations to provide a false alibi for Sale, and had deleted data from his phone to hide his actions. At the time he was charged in the Carly case, James was already incarcerated for illegal possession of weapons and prohibited substances. In November 2022, 31-year-old James Anthony Canine had little reaction when he was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison, followed by a 4-year parole period. After the trial, Carly's parents expressed that although justice was served, the verdict would never bring their daughter back. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Stephanie Scott. Stephanie Scott is 26 years old, a kind and intelligent person who always has a smile on her face. She was very active as a child, participating in school clubs and sports. As an adult, she followed in her father Robert's footsteps as a teacher, sharing his passion for education. She teaches English and drama at Leon High School and takes great pride in her work. Stephanie and her fiancé Aaron have known each other since they were children. They spent time together, shared common interests, and played sports in their hometown. They were best friends until Aaron turned 21, when their relationship blossomed into love. In April 2015, the couple was busy preparing for their wedding, scheduled for April 11th. Stephanie, a perfectionist, spent months planning every detail, from the preparations to their honeymoon in Tahiti. She had just had her bachelorette party and the couple had learned their first dance for their wedding day. Everything was almost ready, but sadly their dream did not come true. April 2015 was a reminder to Stephanie and Aaron that their wedding day was approaching. While Aaron had plans to attend a party in the suburbs, he invited Stephanie to come along, but she decided to stay and focus on finishing up work before their honeymoon. On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, Stephanie arrived at her school in Leon, New South Wales, at around 11 a.m. to hand over some work to her teacher. She parked her car on the street and walked to meet a colleague, with whom she unlocked the school gate. Stephanie then locked the gate and, key in hand, headed to the English teacher's office. There, she emailed a bus company to confirm transportation arrangements for her wedding guests. Stephanie spent a few hours working, feeling happy that she had completed all her tasks. When she was done, she left the administration building, heading toward the gate to leave. Aaron, knowing that Stephanie had left and would be away for a few hours, became anxious as the evening approached. He had texted her the day before and received a prompt response. However, on April 5th, he received no response from Stephanie. Returning home after 7 p.m., Aaron found that Stephanie had not returned, and her car was not on the street. He tried to control his anxiety, reassuring himself that the stress of the upcoming wedding and being away from school for such a long time might be affecting Stephanie, making her want some alone time. However, such complete silence was out of character for her. Even as she eagerly planned her wedding, Stephanie enjoyed every minute, eagerly sharing details about her wedding dress and menu. She did not appear nervous or bored, but instead excited and ready for her big day. Aaron's concern for Stephanie grew, and he couldn't sleep. The next morning, he sent her another text, but when he didn't receive a response, he decided to contact her family for support. It had been more than 24 hours since he had been unable to reach Stephanie, prompting Aaron to go to the Leon Police Department to officially report her missing. Police opened an investigation, beginning with a search of the area around Stephanie's last known location. When they discovered that her car was also missing, they began to speculate about what might have happened. One possible scenario was that Stephanie had left school and gotten into a car accident, or perhaps gotten stuck in a ditch or creek. A search effort was launched, with helicopters scanning the area from above and police units conducting ground searches. Last known location of the high school where she worked. Affected by Easter Sunday and the limited number of people at the school, there were few witnesses, complicating the police investigation. When they checked the school's alarm system, they discovered that Stephanie had turned it off in her classroom at 1:30 p.m. and turned it back on 8 minutes later, pinpointing her exact location at that time. However, this detail was the only information the police were able to gather. When they attempted to track Stephanie's phone, they discovered that it was turned off and there was no recent activity on her bank account or social media after Saturday, April 4th. Local news began reporting the story on April 7th, as hundreds of people in the small town searched for any information about Stephanie. Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, expressed concern that if her daughter was not found soon, it could indicate that something terrible had happened. Police refocused their search efforts on the school, using digital mapping technology to examine the premises and pinpoint the specific room where Stephanie was last seen working before she went missing. A witness who was near Leon High School on Easter Sunday reported hearing unusual noises around 2 p.m., including rustling and dragging sounds. At the time, the witness did not think much of seeing Stephanie's car parked under the covered walkway. However, the car was gone by then. Another witness, a school employee, had a strange conversation with a cleaner. the day after Stephanie went missing. The employee mentioned the rumors surrounding Stephanie's disappearance to the cleaner and asked when he had last seen her. The cleaner replied that he had not seen Stephanie on the day she went missing. When asked if he thought Stephanie might have run away due to post-wedding stress, the cleaner smiled strangely and nervously, making the employee feel uncomfortable. The employee also noticed that the cleaner had scratches on her face. The police decided to question the cleaner, 24-year-old Vincent Stanford, for more information. Vincent told the police that he had stopped by the school to take out the trash, despite not being scheduled to work that day. He claimed that he did not stay long because he was in a hurry to go shopping. Vincent insisted that he had not seen Stephanie at the time and wished them luck in their search. He added that he had left the school after 3 p.m. to go to the store where he usually shopped. However, when the police contacted the store, they discovered that it was closed that day, contrary to Vincent's statement. This led the police to suspect Vincent of lying, and he became a suspect in the investigation. The police decided to conduct a thorough interview with Vincent and went to his home where he lived with his mother. When they arrived, they found Vincent absent, but his mother allowed them to enter the house. The police search of the house eventually uncovered a set of keys attached to a red and white string. These keys were very similar to the missing Stephanie's keys. As the police continued to collect evidence, Vincent returned home and was immediately arrested by the police, while his car was also impounded. In the back seat, they found several MDF boards that appeared to be covered in blood. The police also noticed that the tire marks in front of the house did not match those of Vincent's car. Additionally, a used condom was found on the ground with the wrapper in the bedroom. The police questioned Vincent about his whereabouts that day. He pointed to a camera in the front seat and claimed that he was taking pictures. The police asked to see the contents of the camera, and Vincent reluctantly agreed. When they turned on the camera, they saw a horrifying image of a charred, dead woman lying in a wooded area. Vincent initially tried to dismiss the image as a still from a movie he had starred in, thinking it was funny. However, the police quickly realized that the image was actually a photo of a real crime scene, with the victim being Stephanie. Vincent Stanford, a janitor at Leon High School, was immediately arrested. A search of his phone and laptop revealed a collection of images, including photos of young girls from school and from the internet, as well as photos of women he had apparently stalked. The discovery painted a dark picture of Vincent's behavior. Although Stephanie Scott's body has not been found, Vincent Stanford, 24, was charged with murder on April 9th. News of the arrest spread quickly. Stephanie's car had previously been found abandoned in a remote area about 5 miles from where she was last known to be. However, her body remains missing, prompting the search to continue. Police are still working to determine the exact location where her body was photographed. On April 17th, 5 days after Stephanie went missing, another witness came forward. He reported seeing a car near a canal around 4 p.m. on Easter Sunday. A man got out of the car and threw what appeared to be a laptop into the water before driving away. Police later recovered the laptop from the bottom of the canal, confirming it was Stephanie's. The search for Stephanie's body continues in the New South Wales Rivers area, where police divers have been scouring the waterways. Reporter Natalie Cooper, in a live broadcast, discussed the ongoing search for Stephanie's body. Meanwhile, police have expanded their search to fields and vineyards near where Stephanie's red Mazda was found earlier this week. Despite a search by police divers in the canal, Stephanie's body has not been found. Reporter Natalie reported that a makeshift shrine near the site of the tragedy was visited by many people that morning. Bystanders and her family and fiancé had visited the shrine the night before, surname lighting candles and praying together. Vincent, who was in police custody, asked to speak to the police. During the conversation, he gave them detailed information about the case, including the location of Stephanie's body. According to Vincent, on the day of the incident, Stephanie was working on her computer in the upstairs staff room with the office door open. Vincent was using a vacuum to clean out the trash and needed to move some bins upstairs. As he approached the room, he saw Stephanie. Vincent told the police that he suddenly had the idea of killing her and quickly went home to get his special kit, which included handcuffs, Viagra, a knife, and toiletries. He also did a Google search on violent crimes on the way back. On his way back, Vincent encountered Stephanie as she was leaving. She smiled and wished him a happy Easter as she passed by. However, in a sudden and unexpected move, Vincent grabbed her and dragged her into a nearby storage room. When police questioned him about the scratches on his face, he revealed that they were from Stephanie's microphone and her fingernails when she defended herself while he tried to kill her. Vincent described the attack on Stephanie in detail, saying that he approached her from behind, covered her mouth with one hand and held her waist with the other. He took her to the storage room, slamming the door. Inside, he violently threw her to the ground, hitting her repeatedly. After the attack, Vincent used a knife to kill Stephanie. He admitted that the act was motivated by homicidal urges, revealing that he had sadistic thoughts and had committed murders before. Although he speculated that he may have had some psychological issues, Vincent said that he did not hate his victims but instead felt pleasure from the act of killing. Vincent then felt hungry and went home to eat a sandwich and drink coffee, leaving Stephanie's body in the storage room. After eating, he returned to the school and placed her body in the trunk of his car. He then drove home. On Easter Monday, Vincent took Stephanie's car and drove to a national park. There, he removed her body from the trunk and removed her clothes. He observed that her face had multiple injuries, including severe bruising and swelling on the right side of her face, as well as bruising under her eye. Vincent then covered the body with branches and poured gasoline over her. He lit the gasoline with a match. Before leaving, he stayed at the scene for a while and took several photographs. After setting up the camera to take pictures of Stephanie's body, Vincent waited 5 minutes to ensure the fire had burned out before leaving the scene. He abandoned Stephanie's car on a deserted country road and walked back to town. During questioning, Vincent denied abusing Stephanie despite police evidence suggesting he had abused her, leading to additional charges of causing grievous bodily harm and injury. When questioned about her earrings and wedding ring, he claimed he did not remember taking them off and may have thrown them away with the other items. In fact, Vincent took Stephanie's wedding ring and graduation ring, along with her earrings, and sent them to his twin brother, Marcus, in Adelaide. Marcus sold the items at a jewelry store and later destroyed Stephanie's driver's license after taking a photo of it. Vincent's brother Marcus Stanford, 24, was arrested at his Adelaide Hills home around 7 a.m. in connection with Stephanie's murder, leaving neighbors shocked and unsettled. Marcus, who appeared inconspicuous, worked on a flower farm, where colleagues described him as quiet and reserved, barely communicating with them outside of work hours. Marcus Stanford appeared without a lawyer during the trial and, with a strong Dutch accent, told the judge he had never been to Leeton and saw no reason to go there. Despite his testimony, he was taken to Sydney the following morning under police escort, where he was taken into custody. The search for Stephanie finally ended. Following Vincent's confession, police discovered her body in a national park 60 miles from Leon's secondary school. Detailed investigations revealed that Stephanie had been brutally beaten in the head a total of 40 times, resulting in her death. Her body was then dumped and burned. Photos found on Vincent's phone were confirmed to be of Stephanie, leaving no doubt as to his guilt. Both Vincent and his brother, Marcus, were subsequently brought to trial. Vincent initially denied any wrongdoing. However, based on the evidence presented by the police, it was decided that the case could lead to a conviction. Vincent was deemed a dangerous serial killer. He appeared to lack emotion and empathy, was cruel and indifferent, often laughing and not taking the situation seriously. A deeper look into Vincent Stanford's past revealed a number of disturbing facts. Born in Australia, Vincent moved to the Netherlands with his family when he was 3 years old before eventually returning to New South Wales. As a child, Vincent had disturbing thoughts. At age 7, he fantasized about murder. By age 12, he had nearly strangled a teacher, leading his classmates to label him a psychopath. Due to his violent and disobedient behavior issues, Vincent was sent to a reform school. He later expressed feelings of being unable to fit in with society and was later admitted to a psychiatric facility where he was diagnosed with autism and oppositional defiant disorder. Vincent was rejected by both the university and the army after his release, so he worked a variety of jobs until he landed a job as a janitor at Leon Junior High School. His initial 5-week contract was later extended, allowing him to continue working at the school. During his time there, Vincent would often sneak into the girls' restroom during lunch breaks to secretly observe the students. An investigation of Vincent's phone revealed that he had been stalking several girls at the school, as well as 2 women who worked at nearby stores, before finally killing Stephanie. Police discovered a large collection of photos, nearly 2,000, of a young girl on his phone, along with diary entries documenting his obsession with the girl. In these diary entries, Vincent detailed his attempts to follow the girl home, recording her departures and even speculating about whether anyone else was with her. One diary entry stated, "She was home alone at 3:40 p.m., plenty of time to kidnap her." It appears that Vincent initially targeted the young girl, but once she left town, he shifted his focus to Stephanie, who worked at the school and was ultimately his victim. After a thorough search of Vincent's car, police found evidence of Stephanie's DNA on MDF boards. Inside Vincent's house, they discovered Stephanie's blood on several items, a knife, several condom packs, and her bra. Vincent's twin brother, Marcus, admitted to his role in the crime, including selling Stephanie's ring, destroying evidence, and helping Vincent cover up the truth. As a result, Marcus was sentenced to 15 months in prison without the possibility of parole. His sentence was for his involvement in the murder of Stephanie Scott, and his prison term was set to end on September 9, 2016. If Marcus had not pleaded guilty, he would have received an 18-month sentence. In October 2016, Marcus Stanford was released from prison. After his release, more than 60 people signed a petition expressing their disagreement with the court's decision and asking for an appeal. The petition describes the court's decision as unacceptable. After his release, Marcus briefly returned to his hometown of Leon with his mother. However, people in his hometown made it clear that he was not welcome, forcing him to leave again. His current whereabouts are unknown. Since his release, Marcus has publicly apologized for his actions and promised not to cause any more trouble. He has admitted that his past behavior was foolish and has expressed remorse for the harm he has caused. Marcus has also stated that he has no intention of contacting his brother Vincent and does not want to reconcile with him. Steve, the twins' father, he is shocked, scared, and does not want to talk to or see Vincent. Steve admits that he does not understand why Vincent committed these crimes. Vincent Stanford was sentenced to life in prison for murder and 15 years for sexual violence, both sentences effective April 8, 2015. Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, expressed her grief, saying that Vincent could not cope with his own life, so he took her daughter's life. Marilyn believed that this deprived Stephanie of the chance to have a happy future. Although the family did not know the full extent of Stephanie's pain, they knew that she had suffered unbearable pain. Therefore, the family wanted to stay away from the public to mourn their daughter and overcome the pain. In the future, Stephanie's family members have decided not to participate in interviews or television shows or answer questions. However, they have planned a final celebration. The day after the trial, Stephanie's family planned a gathering to remember her life on what would have been her 28th birthday, a birthday they would celebrate for the second time without her. They held a 3 p.m. tea party with peppermint cookies, which Stephanie's mother invited everyone to attend. In addition, the family is campaigning for stricter background checks and assessments for school staff in the hope of preventing incidents like the one that affected Stephanie and reducing the risk to students. After Stephanie's tragic death, the family suffered another tragic loss when her father, Robert, died in an accident involving a falling tree. He was buried near his daughter. Her boyfriend, Aaron, in an attempt to escape the painful memories of New South Wales, moved to Europe. However, he eventually found love again and became engaged to a woman named Samantha 5 years after Stephanie's death. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of April Jones. On October 1st, 2012, April Jones, 5, was playing outside her home in the Bryn Aeg housing estate in West Wales. It was around 7 p.m. Normally, April's parents wouldn't let her play outside so late, but she had received excellent grades the day before, so they gave her more time to play. April played outside with her friends for about 20 minutes before heading home. However, she did not return home at 7 p.m., as scheduled. Her parents last saw her riding her bike and immediately began searching for her. They soon found her 7-year-old friend not far away, but April was nowhere to be found. April's friend told them that April had gotten into a car with a man wearing a green jacket, with blue eyes, brown hair, and a beard. A key detail was revealed by the young child, who showed intelligence beyond her years. She reported that April had gotten into the car on the driver's side. However, as the steering wheel is usually on the right in British cars, this would suggest that the car in question had a left-hand drive. Despite the time of night, the police were quick, arriving on the scene just 8 minutes after the 999 call was made. As search teams gathered, police interviewed anyone who knew April to gather information about her disappearance and to see if anything unusual had happened in the days leading up to her disappearance. They tried to piece together the events surrounding her disappearance. The family could not think of any information that would assist the police in their search. April had attended swimming lessons earlier that day and was allowed to play outside with friends when she returned home. However, April had only been missing for a short time, but it was late fall and it would soon be dark, making it very difficult to find her. News of the incident spread quickly through the neighborhood through word of mouth and social media. Hundreds of locals rushed out of their homes to help in any way they could. Despite their good intentions, this actually made the police's job more difficult. While they were grateful for the community's support, they still had to go door to door to find out if anyone had seen April or who might have kidnapped her. The problem was, with so many people out trying to help, most of the houses were empty, making it difficult for the police to gather information and conduct their investigation. The story quickly gained widespread national attention and attracted television crews and reporters from across the country to the small town. Police provided a 10:30 update to the public and media, expressing concern that they had still not found any evidence or leads of April. Police urged anyone who may have seen or known anything about April's disappearance to come forward immediately. April Jones was born on April 4, 2007. Despite a happy childhood, April faced a number of health problems in her early years due to being born 7 weeks premature. However, with medical care, she was able to overcome most of these problems and have a normal childhood. One condition that April has not overcome is cerebral palsy, a brain disorder caused by trauma during or shortly after birth, usually due to lack of oxygen to the brain. The condition affects April from the waist down. Fortunately, it is not too serious. However, the condition causes pain and difficulty with simple muscle movements. Even with a mild condition, she still needs careful care. The most worrying thing is that her kidnapper may not know about her small defect, which may not be important to them. On the evening of October 1st, the police released more details about April's disappearance. Specifically, she was last seen wearing a school polo shirt and purple jacket. More than 100 people, including local residents and volunteers from the UK, have gathered to assist the police in the search. Locals who are familiar with the area may be very helpful in locating her. Others have traveled from South Wales to assist, showing their desire to help find April. The search area near the town was vast and dangerous, spanning 60 square kilometers of mountains, waterfalls, gorges, dense forests and uneven terrain. Severe weather conditions, including heavy rain and overcast skies, made the search even more difficult. To ensure their safety, police carefully organized volunteers into several search teams. For 8 hours, teams braved the weather and traversed the difficult Welsh countryside to find April. The outpouring of support from the volunteers was a testament to the compassion of the community and brought some comfort to April's family as they anxiously waited by the phone for news. Police initially banned the family from participating in the search, fearing they would be fined. As the situation became more desperate, with April still missing, the police issued a child rescue alert on October 2, 2012. This alert allowed the police to share vital details about April and her abductor with all UK police agencies. As a result, the entire nation learned of the case for the first time. 14 hours after April went missing, the media put enormous pressure on the police. They also raised questions about the police's handling of the investigation. It could be argued that the criticism of the police was unfair. Despite the harsh weather conditions, the police quickly organized search parties and searched for April throughout the night. Considering the circumstances, it is unlikely that they could have done more that night. After Inspector Andy John took over the investigation, he provided the public and the media with regular updates. He also erected barricades and directed officers to set up checkpoints. During the investigation, posters with April's picture were distributed in the hope that someone would come forward with information. Police received numerous reports from local residents and people in the surrounding areas. In reviewing these reports, one name was mentioned repeatedly: Mark Bridger. Several witnesses identified a local man named Mark as a potential suspect. He was known to drive a Land Rover, had blue eyes, and a short beard. He was also notably left-hand drive. Several witnesses reported seeing Mark or his vehicle in the area at the time of April's disappearance. Police tracked down Mark's last known address and made numerous attempts to contact him, but neither he nor April were found there. Mark notably had no criminal record. Although some residents claimed to have seen Mark during the first night search for April, it was difficult to confirm due to the large number of volunteers involved. Currently, the police are focused on locating him. Helicopters circled the area as police conducted a thorough search of all possible locations where he could have been. They learned that Mark had recently moved into a new house called Mount Pleasant. There was no sign of life to the police when they arrived. The house did not have any cars. They entered the house and called April's name, but she did not respond. At that time, it was unclear whether Mark had been hiding from the police. However, at 4:30 a.m., they issued a statement announcing his arrest. A police plane spotted him walking with his dog along a country road, not far from April's family home. He appeared to have tried to change his appearance by cutting his hair and shaving his beard. The helicopter guided the police patrol car to his location. When the police stopped him, the officers asked him his name, and he answered truthfully, without hesitation. They then asked, "Where is she?" Mark responded by explaining what had happened, saying, "It was an accident. I accidentally hit her with my car, and I don't know where she is." They then took him to the nearest police station in Aberystwyth. Meanwhile, in April's hometown, an extensive search operation was underway. Police units, K9 search teams, volunteers and mountain rescuers scoured the Welsh countryside, searching every area thoroughly. Despite their tireless efforts and determination, April remained missing. Along with a hardworking, determined team of emergency services, hundreds of volunteers from across the country stayed up all night, slept for a few hours, and then resumed the search. The police received a huge response to their appeal for help, with over 600 people offering their support and suggesting potential search locations. This allowed the police to deploy a large team of volunteers who, with their local knowledge, were able to meticulously search over 20 separate areas. While the public can sometimes inadvertently hinder an investigation, local expertise is essential in remote locations like this, and the police need all the support they can get. At this point, the police have arrested Mark Bridger and are questioning him. During questioning, Mark admitted that he had been drinking and was in the area at the time of the incident. He saw two girls riding bicycles and remembered a dark-haired girl passing behind him. Mark admitted that he hit April with his car while he was intoxicated. Mark claimed that he never meant to hurt April, although he admitted that he knew he had made a mistake. According to him, he put her in his car because he believed she needed immediate hospital care. But when Mark saw, her lips turned purple. He realized that his actions had led to April's death. Mark even claimed to be friends with her parents. Although he was initially cooperative, his memory suddenly began to fail. He could not remember anything about what he had done to April's body. Although the police attempted to question him, Mark insisted that he had amnesia and could not provide any further information. The police intensified the interrogation and pressured Mark. It was clear that he was not being truthful. As a result, the police began to doubt whether April was really dead. The police decided to have Mark recount the events that happened the previous Tuesday, the day he was arrested. And they planned to use this opportunity to extract more information from him. When questioned, Mark said that after getting out of the car, he saw April underneath, which made him think that he had run over her. However, the police received information from a 7-year-old child who was with April. She said that April was fine and had voluntarily gotten into Mark's car. April even smiled. This information contradicted his testimony. Mark changed his tone, saying that he did not know that the police had a young witness who had witnessed the entire incident. However, this witness's testimony contradicted Mark's account, making him clearly upset. Despite his emotional state, Mark continued to stand his ground against various interrogation techniques. His testimony remained the same, and nothing changed. The police consulted Dr. Joe Sullivan, a leading expert on body language and criminal behavior. To gain a deeper understanding of the suspect and create an accurate psychological profile, Dr. Joe not only observed Mark's interviews but also visited his home. This thorough examination revealed surprising insights. Mark had an arsenal of knives, handcuffs, and handguns in his home, some hidden and others openly displayed. Dr. Joe described Mark as a daydreamer with a distorted view of reality, imagining himself as a Rambo-like character. This meant that he had difficulty separating his daydreams from the real world. However, Mark disagreed with Dr. Joe's assessment. Mark would not change his story now. Their only chance was for forensic experts to thoroughly search Mark's home. The search found small traces of blood in the bathroom, possibly from Mark bleeding while shaving. Police sent blood samples to the lab for analysis, a process that could take up to 24 hours to get results. Dr. Joe informed the police of his assessment of Mark. He was unlikely to feel empathy or guilt for his actions. He would therefore not respond to appeals to conscience or feel remorse. Therefore, the police should not expect Mark to show remorse, sympathy, or guilt when answering their questions. The police took Dr. Joe's advice to heart. After the police discovered sensitive and disturbing images of children on his laptop, Mark was immediately arrested. As a result, Mark began to suspect that the police knew more than they were letting on. 3 days after April went missing on Monday night, her parents received heartbreaking news on Thursday. The police had given up hope of finding April alive. With heavy hearts, her parents had to tell their children that the search for April was no longer a rescue mission but a murder investigation. And the family would have to accept the loss of their little sister. Meanwhile, the police had instructed the volunteers who had been searching for April to return home and let the professionals handle the situation. This decision was met with strong opposition from the volunteers who did not want to give up. Hundreds of volunteers, exhausted and frustrated, left the search site after finding nothing. On the fourth day of April's disappearance, police search teams combed the area for clues. According to forensic investigators, there was no evidence that Mark had killed April. And, importantly, there was not a shred of evidence that Mark's story was true. An examination of Mark's Land Rover revealed no signs of damage, no blood, no hair, and no skin. There was no evidence of injury to April. According to Mark's testimony, there should have been signs of injury to April, such as scratches on the vehicle or blood inside, but none were found. Mark attempted to downplay his involvement by claiming that he did not see any blood on April after her collision with his car. He asserted that despite being run over, she did not appear to have any visible open wounds. The lab then contacted the police on Friday at 6:15 p.m. with crucial evidence. They had compared DNA from April's toothbrush to blood found in Mark's bathroom, confirming that it was April's blood. Additionally, the collar of Mark's fleece jacket and jogging pants, which he had been wearing, also contained April's DNA. When police questioned him, the photos were discovered on his laptop. Mark claimed that he did not find the content attractive. Mark was shown photos depicting the exploitation and manipulation of minors in a sexually explicit manner. When confronted with his internet search history, Mark denied looking for illegal sites for personal gratification. By Saturday, Mark had been detained for 3.5 days. Police had a total of 96 hours to question him. As the time limit for questioning him was running out, the case was transferred to the Crown Prosecution Service, which will decide whether to proceed with prosecution. Police questioned Mark several times about the disturbing images found on his laptop. As the investigation continued, they struggled to find new ways to persuade him to reveal the truth. When asked if he wanted children, Mark replied that he did not want to be a father. The police then asked, "Did you masturbate to these pictures?" Mark denied it. Mark initially remained calm, but his demeanor began to collapse as the conversation progressed. He flew into a rage and began swearing, clearly upset that someone had suggested he was a pedophile. The case was then referred to the Crown Prosecution Service for further action. The Crown Prosecution Service eventually allowed the police to charge Mark Bridger with the abduction and murder of April Jones, just over an hour after Mark's final interview. When the charges were read to him, Mark showed no emotion or remorse. Over the next 2 weeks, forensic investigators searched Mark's home and found traces of blood that belonged to April. The fireplace was also searched, where a number of badly decomposed bones were discovered. However, due to their poor condition, it was not possible to determine for certain whether the bones belonged to April. A jury found Mark Bridger, 47, guilty on May 30, 2013, for the kidnapping and murder of April Jones. Sentenced Mark Bridger to life in prison without parole. After the trial, April Jones' body was never found. Although 17 bone fragments were discovered in Mark's home, none of them could be positively identified as April's. April Jones' death has left a permanent void in her family's hearts that will never be filled. While her family and friends are working to rebuild their lives, the pain of their loss will continue. A funeral was held in April's hometown on April 26, 2013. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Mitzi Sanchez. Mitzi Sanchez was born on August 10, 1992 in Vallejo, California. She grew up in a loving family with 2 brothers and an older sister. As a child, Mitzi was very cheerful and energetic. She loved playing outdoors with her friends and spending time with her siblings. Mitzi was independent from a young age. When she started elementary school, her parents let her walk to school with her brother and they did not need an adult to accompany them. Fortunately, the school was close to their home and most of the way to school was on busy roads, making it safer for them to get to school. August 10, 2000 was Mitzi's 8th birthday and her family prepared a party to celebrate this special day. However, her school did not allow students to miss school on their birthdays. When Mitzi asked her mother if she could miss school on her birthday, her mother refused. Mitzi was very upset about this, and around 7:30 a.m., she left home with her brother. After school, Mitzi had to wait for her brother so they could walk home together. However, when her brother got out of school, he couldn't find his sister anywhere. Thinking that his sister had walked home by herself, he went home alone, but it turned out that Mitzi wasn't home. Mitzi's older sister was home at the time, and she noticed that her younger sister Mitzi hadn't come home yet, which seemed unusual, especially since it was Mitzi's birthday today and she was really looking forward to her birthday party. She waited for a while, hoping that Mitzi would eventually show up. At 4 p.m., her older sister became worried and called their mother to inform her of Mitzi's absence. Their mother quickly contacted Mitzi's school and found out that Mitzi had attended all of her classes that day. The mother then contacted other family members and friends of Mitzi, but no one had seen Mitzi since she left school. Mitzi's relatives became concerned and began searching for her. Family, friends, and neighbors joined in the effort, quickly organizing a large-scale search campaign. Some volunteers walked the streets, while others canvassed the neighborhood, going door to door along the route from Mitzi's home to her school, asking if anyone had seen her. Flyers with information about the girl were also printed and distributed. However, despite these extensive efforts, no one had any news of Mitzi, prompting her parents to contact the 911 emergency services. The police immediately joined the search for Mitzi and local media began reporting on the case the same day Mitzi went missing. The case has attracted widespread attention because similar incidents have occurred in their town before, raising concerns in the community. In fact, for years, an unknown perpetrator or perpetrators have been abducting children in Vallejo. The most recent case, before Mitzi's disappearance, occurred in December 1999. 7-year-old Xana Fairchild, who lived near Mitzi's home, disappeared on her way to school and, despite the efforts of the police and FBI, was never found. When Mitzi disappeared on her way home from school, police immediately suspected a connection to the unsolved case of Xana, who had disappeared under similar circumstances. Although the cases had striking similarities, the lack of leads hampered the investigation. Police revisited the initial list of suspects in Xana's case, but nothing came up. News of Mitzi's disappearance spread quickly, making headlines across the state. Fears of a serial kidnapper on the loose gripped the community, and the possibility of another victim was a terrifying prospect. Mitzi's family members gave numerous interviews in an attempt to keep the case alive and potentially gather more information. Her mother desperately called out to her kidnapper, pleading for her safe return. Police received numerous tips from the public, but unfortunately, none of them led to any breakthroughs in the case. However, everything changed 24 hours after Mitzi went missing, when something unexpected happened. A man contacted the police, telling them that he had discovered bloody rags in a dumpster. Upon examination, experts determined that the rags were actually bed sheets from a Vallejo hotel. This discovery led the police to the hotel to search for evidence and potential clues. Although they could not confirm whether Mitzi had stayed at the hotel, the bed sheets were sent to a lab for analysis, which would take several days to process. In addition to waiting for the test results, the police searched the dumpster, looking for any other clues, but found nothing. The next day, August 12th, the police received another call that changed the course of the case. At approximately 11 a.m., a man reported that he was driving through an industrial area in Santa Clara, when a young girl ran up to his truck, screaming that someone was chasing her. The girl then climbed into the cab of the truck and the driver saw a man running toward them. The girl screamed that he had kidnapped her and wanted to kill her. As soon as she got into the truck, the perpetrator turned around, got back in the car, and drove away. The driver then contacted the police and gave them the girl's name, Mitzi Sanchez. The officers immediately picked her up and took her to the hospital for evaluation. While at the hospital, Mitzi was able to speak to her mother on the phone. Shortly thereafter, her relatives arrived at the hospital and reunited with Mitzi. Meanwhile, the police spoke with the truck driver. He provided the kidnapper's license plate number, because it had driven right in front of his truck. Luckily, if he hadn't been there, the perpetrator might have caught up with the girl. The police ran the license plate and identified the car as belonging to a 39-year-old man named Curtis Dean Anderson. Curtis had a criminal record, including theft, kidnapping, and suspicion of other crimes. As the police focused their efforts on finding the kidnapper, their colleagues were ready to listen to Mitzi's account of what had happened to her. Mitzi explained that on August 10th, she was excited to go home after her last day of school to celebrate her birthday with her family. Instead of waiting for her brother, Mitzi decided to go alone. As she was walking home, she saw a car parked on the side of the road a few hundred yards away and noticed the driver watching her intently in the rearview mirror. Mitzi felt uncomfortable with him but quickly brushed it off. It was daytime, she was on a familiar street, and being young, she did not fully understand the potential danger posed by strangers. As Mitzi approached the car, the man got out and asked her to help him. He said he needed to get a roll of tape from under the car seat and explained that he could not bend down due to a leg injury from falling off his bike. Mitzi hesitated for a moment, initially hesitant, but her instinct to help others, passed down from her parents, eventually made her agree. As she reached into the car to get the tape, the man quickly pushed her into the car, covered her mouth to keep her from screaming, and slammed the door shut. Mitzi tried to scream, but it was too late. The kidnapper had driven off in an unknown direction, and she looked out the window in horror. At one point, they passed Mitzi's house and she saw relatives preparing to celebrate her birthday. Minutes later, the kidnapper pulled into a deserted parking lot. He gave Mitzi new clothes, told her to change, and threw her old clothes in a nearby trash can. He also warned her not to try to escape, claiming that he had a gun and that no one could escape him. Over the next few hours, the man drove Mitzi in an unknown direction. At one point, she asked why he kidnapped her, and he simply replied that he had been kidnapped as a child. As night fell, he parked the car and began covering the windows with some rags. He then restrained Mitzi by tying her legs with padlocks. The kidnapper pulled out a bottle of alcohol and forced Mitzi to take a few sips. Although she initially resisted, Mitzi eventually complied with his demands. The man then took out his camera and took several photos of Mitzi before she got in the car. Fearing for her safety, Mitzi tried to stay awake and keep an eye on the situation. Mitzi thought about escaping as she struggled to stay awake. She caught a glimpse of a police car driving past the parking lot, but it was too far away. Even if Mitzi screamed, the police never heard her. The next day, the kidnapper continued to drive her around town. To hide her from view, he made her sit on the floor of the car and covered her with a blanket. Finally, he stopped the car and got out for a few minutes. During this short time, Mitzi tried to get her feet out of the chains, but unfortunately, it was not possible. She also discovered a nail file and tried to use it to pick the lock, but her efforts were unsuccessful. When the kidnapper returned to the car and drove away, he said he had stopped at her parents' house. The kidnapper pretended to be a concerned citizen and asked to distribute flyers around town. Mitzi was shocked and overwhelmed. She was so close to home but still held captive. Over the course of several hours, the kidnapper stopped several times, getting in and out of the car. When it got dark, he drove to a remote area outside of town and parked. There, he committed a heinous crime, sexually assaulting Mitzi. The traumatic experience left Mitzi in a state of shock while the kidnapper fell asleep. The next morning, the perpetrator continued driving, stopping occasionally to buy cigarettes and alcohol. At one of these stops, as he returned to the car and leaned in, something fell out of his pocket. He warned Mitzi not to look, but she disobeyed and caught a glimpse of a large set of keys. Mitzi realized that one of these keys was capable of unlocking the lock on her bike chain. Despite her fear of retaliation from her kidnapper, Mitzi mustered up the courage to act. She took out the keys, selected the one that seemed to fit the lock best, and tried to unlock the chain. Surprisingly, it worked. Mitzi was free of the chain. Mitzi struggled to get out through the car window, but exhaustion left her barely able to move. She gathered all her strength, trying to lift herself up and jump out of the car. As she crawled around the car, she saw her captor, who had spotted her immediately. He yelled for her to come back, but Mitzi was determined to escape. Using the last of her strength, she ran in the opposite direction. The captor chased after her, while Mitzi waved desperately and shouted to the passing cars for help. Unfortunately, they all drove past without stopping. Mitzi continued to wave because she knew that if she stopped for even a moment, the captor would catch up and harm her. Finally, she spotted a truck, ran towards it, and jumped in front of it. The driver quickly stopped, and Mitzi climbed into the cab. She was in shock, dehydrated and hungry, but her life was no longer in danger. At the hospital, doctors gave Mitzi the help she needed and soon her entire family came to be with her. News of her miraculous rescue quickly spread, making headlines across the city. When Mitzi returned home, a large crowd of thousands had gathered on her street, cheering and celebrating her belated birthday. Meanwhile, the police were searching for the kidnapper Curtis Dean Anderson. When they showed his photo to Mitzi's mother, she realized that she had actually seen him twice. The first time was before Mitzi was kidnapped, when Curtis stood on the street and looked toward their house. The second time was the day after Mitzi went missing. Curtis came to her house and asked for flyers related to Mitzi's disappearance. The police continued to search for the suspect, Curtis, until late in the evening. They set up surveillance at all the locations he frequented, and he was finally arrested in a trailer park. He was arrested without incident. Curtis was then taken into custody pending trial. Police began investigating Curtis's possible links to other crimes. During the investigation, they learned that Mitzi was not his first victim. In fact, Curtis told Mitzi himself that she was not the first victim he had harmed and that no one had ever escaped him before. This statement led police to suspect that Curtis had committed crimes before Mitzi was kidnapped, despite his claims that none of his previous victims had survived. Curtis' actions suggested that he had experience committing such brutal crimes. It is worth noting that Curtis had been imprisoned for kidnapping a woman in 1991. He was released in November 1999. It was clear that Curtis intended to kill Mitzi. One specific detail that suggests the murder was planned occurred on the day of her escape. The police knew why Curtis stopped by the industrial park. Because he used to work there at one of the companies, and that day he visited his former co-workers. He asked them to give him a large bag, and the police immediately realized that he intended to use that bag to dump the body in. After Curtis was arrested, Mitzi struggled to recover for a long time. Her anxiety increased when the police suspected Curtis of being involved in Xana's kidnapping. Although Mitzi was relieved to be safe, she was still worried about the condition of her friend Xana Fairchild, 7, who had been missing for more than 8 months without any updates on her condition. Desperate to help find Xana, Mitzi joined a search effort, but unfortunately, no new leads were discovered. This continued until January 2001, when a human skull was found in the mountains near the city of Santa Cruz. Forensic analysis confirmed that the skull was that of Xana and she was officially declared dead. This news devastated Mitzi. When the trial began in April 2001, Mitzi was required to testify about her experiences in front of a crowded courtroom. During her testimony, she had to provide every detail of what Curtis had done to her. Despite Curtis being present in the courtroom, Mitzi was still able to tell her story courageously. As a result, Curtis was sentenced to 251 years in prison, but his story did not end there. While in prison, detectives frequently questioned Curtis about his possible involvement in other crimes. A breakthrough came when an inmate reported that Curtis had confided in him about the kidnapping and murder of 8 girls. Although the inmate cooperated with police, sharing details of Curtis's story, he did not reveal all of his secrets. He did not deny the information he had confided in him, but instead attempted to negotiate benefits in exchange for speaking with police. Curtis eventually admitted to the murders of Xana Fairchild and at least 13 other girls and women. It was not until 2005 that he confessed fully to Xana's murder, for which he received an additional 50-year sentence. Mitzi's struggles did not stop after Curtis's trial. She faced a new challenge when she returned to school just weeks after her rescue. Her classmates bullied and taunted her, calling her the kidnapped girl and saying that she should have died instead of being saved. These cruel comments made her school years a burden, and eventually, she could no longer bear the pressure. Mitzi became increasingly dependent on alcohol to cope with the stress. And she felt desperate to return to normal life. However, her life took a drastic turn after a serious car accident at a party, in which she broke her neck and arm. She was in a coma for 2 weeks. When she woke up, doctors informed her that she was pregnant and would give birth to a baby girl. This news turned her life upside down, and Mitzi found the strength to change her life for the better. Curtis died of illness in 2007, 6 years after his conviction. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Tara Baker. Tara Louise Baker was born on January 20, 1977, in East Point, Georgia. Her parents got divorced when she was a child, and her mother later married again. Tara had 2 younger brothers and a younger sister, making her the eldest of 4 siblings. From an early age, Tara showed a strong interest in the law and aspired to be a lawyer or judge. She demonstrated this by conducting mock trials with her stuffed animals, creating contracts with family members, and she also writing letters to politicians. She even wrote to the President of the United States once to complain about his speech interrupting her favorite TV show. After graduating from high school, Tara attended Georgia College, where she earned 2 bachelor's degrees in just 3 years, graduating early. She then enrolled at the University of Georgia in 1999 to pursue further education. The university, located in Athens, was one of the top law schools in the country and was conveniently close to her parents' home. Just a few hours away. Because not wanting to live in a dorm again, Tara opted for off-campus housing. She rented a room in a house that was divided into 3 separate rooms, sharing the space with 2 other university students, one of whom was a familiar face from her college days. Tara was employed at a respected law firm in downtown Athens, which enabled her to pay her living expenses and gain valuable work experience in her chosen field. In January 2001, at the age of 23 and in her 2nd year of studies, Tara spent a significant amount of time at the university library. The evening of January 18th followed this pattern. She and a friend went to the library, where they studied for several hours. Around 7:30 p.m., her friend left for home, but Tara chose to stay longer. At about 9:46 p.m., Tara called her friend to check that she had arrived home safely and mentioned her intention to leave the library in a few minutes. The next day, Virginia Baker, Tara's mother, got a phone call. The caller claimed to be a detective and asked if Tara had ever been arrested, explaining they needed her fingerprints. Virginia initially thought it was a prank call and hung up. But then she called the Athens police station to verify. They confirmed the caller was a real detective and told her there had been a fire at Tara's house. Virginia, still confused, asked to speak to Tara. The detective said they couldn't locate her and had found an unidentified body in the house, which is why they needed Tara's fingerprints. At the crime scene, investigators searched for evidence, but the room was badly damaged from the fire and water. It was later discovered that some items that survived the fire were not checked for fingerprints. Tara's laptop was missing from her room, which was unusual since it was a bulky item and other valuables were left untouched. This raised suspicions that the motive might not have been a robbery gone wrong. With no signs of forced entry, investigators suspected that Tara may have known her killer and let them in. The detective provided more information, stating that only one of Tara's roommates had been located so far, and that person was not at home when the fire occurred. However, the other roommate and Tara herself remained unaccounted for, leading investigators to suspect that the unidentified body might be one of them. When Virginia asked the detective to describe the room where the body was discovered, the response left her stunned. The detective explained that the room was packed with antique items, which was consistent with Tara's long-standing hobby of collecting such things. Tara's family rushed to Athens, hoping that the situation was a misunderstanding and that Tara was safe. Upon arrival at the police station, they were left waiting for hours without receiving any updates. Eventually, a detective met with them and delivered devastating news. The body found in the house was Tara's, and she had been murdered, not a victim of the fire. The detective, claiming exhaustion, declined to answer their questions at that time. However, before departing, he revealed that Tara had unknowingly left behind a crucial piece of evidence, fragments of the perpetrator's skin under her fingernails, which could potentially aid in identifying the killer. Tara's relatives were shocked and devastated by the news of her murder. The police refused to provide them with more information, despite their repeated pleas. Desperate for answers, the family made multiple attempts to contact the police, but were continually rebuffed. In fact, the police department never reached out to the family on their own, forcing Tara's relatives to repeatedly call and visit the station to gather scraps of information. Over time, they were able to slowly piece together some details of what had occurred. Tara's family discovered that firefighters may have inadvertently destroyed crucial evidence while extinguishing the blaze, a common occurrence in such situations. The firefighters' primary objective was to put out the fire and potentially rescue survivors, unaware that a murder victim was inside. Furthermore, the investigators failed to secure the crime scene after finding the body, allowing unauthorized access to the area. As Tara's relatives sought information, they faced resistance from the police, who were unwilling to keep them informed about the investigation. The family was also subjected to rudeness and unprofessional behavior from the authorities. In an effort to document their interactions, they began recording conversations with the police and filed complaints against local investigators, but this did not yield any results. The family decided to investigate Tara's death on their own and enlisted the help of a well-known criminologist. However, the local police department would only share case materials with him if he agreed to keep all information and findings confidential, even from Tara's family. For 10 years, the family was unable to obtain Tara's death certificate. They finally received it after writing to the state governor. But the certificate did not provide a detailed cause of death, only stating multiple injuries. Determining the exact time of death was difficult. Medical experts estimated it to be between 10 p.m., when Tara left the library, and 11 a.m., when neighbors called the fire department. However, it is likely that the crime occurred closer to the morning hours, as the fire did not take long to spread. The police investigation found witnesses who reported seeing a middle-aged white man running down the street on the morning of the murder. He was only wearing a t-shirt and jeans, which was unusual given the winter weather. Additionally, the police discovered that a few days before the murder, a man who sounded heavily intoxicated called Tara's university and asked for her phone number. The university had a phone number that students and faculty could call to request student information, such as phone numbers. The intoxicated-sounding man was only able to write down Tara's phone number correctly on his 8th attempt. The investigation into Tara's murder raised several suspicions, but the identity of the man involved remained unknown. At the time of her death, Tara was in a relationship with a boyfriend. Despite his confirmed alibi, the police were hesitant to clear him of suspicion. They continued to scrutinize him, making late-night calls to him and his parents, requesting that he travel to a nearby city for further questioning, DNA sampling, or a polygraph test. Notably, it was Tara's boyfriend who was tasked with identifying her body. He had been living in another city but promptly arrived in Athens upon learning of the fire, even though Tara's parents were already present in town. When the police asked the boyfriend to identify the body, they took him to the house but did not let him enter. A police officer went inside, took a photo of the body, and showed it to the boyfriend on the camera screen. The boyfriend was shocked and said he could not be certain if it was Tara. He mentioned that he had given her earrings, and if he saw them, he would know for sure. The officer went back inside, removed the earrings from the body, and showed them to the boyfriend. Only after seeing the earrings did the boyfriend confirm that the body was Tara's. The police then focused on another man, a student in Tara's classes with a troubling reputation. Several female students came forward and reported that this individual would often ask girls out on dates and not accept no as an answer. He had also asked Tara out multiple times, despite knowing she had a boyfriend. Some girls reported that he exhibited creepy behavior, making them feel uneasy. Despite investigating this person, detectives couldn't find any evidence connecting him to the crime. In a contentious move, they even asked Tara's friends to monitor him, but it yielded no results. Investigators also considered another suspect, an attorney at Tara's workplace. They discovered that just before the murder, he began acting strangely. This attorney had been part of a close-knit group of colleagues who regularly socialized outside of work. But he abruptly stopped participating in their gatherings. Moreover, just days before the incident, he had informed Tara that he would be unable to attend her birthday celebration, which was set to take place the day after the murder. On January 19th, before the fire began, one of Tara's colleagues attempted to persuade him to change his mind and attend the celebration, as Tara valued their friendship and was hurt by his sudden refusal. The colleague visited his office but found him absent, which was unusual given that his workday had already started. He was typically present in the office during morning hours, but not on that particular day. The colleague also checked his schedule, wondering if he had meetings, but it was empty. He failed to show up to work that day, but the following day, he visited another colleague's house and acted strangely. Many people who knew the attorney suspected he regularly used illicit substances, which may have contributed to his erratic behavior. However, another detail raised more suspicion. His colleague noticed several fresh scratches on his neck. It was previously discovered that skin particles from the perpetrator were found under Tara's nails, indicating she likely scratched her attacker. The attorney claimed the scratches on his neck came from a cat and denied any involvement in Tara's murder. His behavior became even more bizarre when asked who he thought committed the crime. He suddenly became agitated, shouting that it was Tara's father, but failed to provide any explanation or evidence to support this accusation. A further unusual circumstance was the sudden resignation of the attorney a few months after the murder, followed by his departure from the state. It remains unclear if the police ever compared his DNA to the samples found under the victim's fingernails or if these samples were even analyzed. As with other aspects of the investigation, the detectives did not disclose any information, not even to Tara's family. Subsequent police findings revealed that the attorney had been discreetly involved with two female colleagues from his workplace, despite the fact that he got married. This discovery could potentially explain his peculiar behavior and unexplained absences from work. Additionally, both women claimed they were certain he was using illegal substances. Police found no evidence linking the lawyer to the murder, clearing him as a suspect. A maintenance company with access to a spare key was also questioned, but yielded no results. The case has seen little progress, with authorities keeping investigation details confidential to avoid impeding progress. Over time, several potential leads emerged in the case. A witness came forward claiming to have seen an African-American man outside Tara's house a few hours before the fire. Another person mentioned noticing blood on a notebook belonging to one of Tara's university classmates shortly after the murder. Despite investigating these leads, police were unable to make any progress. Tara's parents offered a $77,000 reward for any information that could help solve the case. However, as the years passed, the team of detectives working on the case changed multiple times, and the new investigators were unable to crack the case. The primary challenge was the lack of evidence, as the fire and the subsequent actions of the firefighters destroyed nearly all potential evidence in Tara's room. In 2019, a podcast covering Tara's 19-year-old murder case was released, bringing together her family, key individuals, and all known information about the crime. This sparked renewed interest and caught the attention of the police department, who began communicating more with Tara's family. As a result, the police re-examined the case, although no new breakthroughs were made. The podcast continued to cover Tara's story for 2 years, ultimately having a substantial impact on the case's progression. The Georgia government introduced a bill to reduce the number of unsolved cases in the state, partly due to Tara's case. The bill was named after Tara and Rhonda Coleman, an 18-year-old woman from Georgia who was murdered in 1990 and whose killer remains unknown. Although the two murders are unrelated, the initiative was called the Coleman-Baker Bill. In 2023, the bill passed unanimously, and the governor signed it in Athens, accompanied by the families of both victims. The law created a special unit within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to focus on unsolved cases. It also gave victims' families the right to ask police to re-examine these cases and take new steps to solve them. After the law passed in 2023, a unit was formed to investigate Tara's murder. Detectives re-reviewed all available information and re-examined the limited evidence using modern DNA analysis. This process took several months until a breakthrough was announced at a press conference on May 13, 2024. After 23 years, police revealed that the perpetrator had been caught. The culprit was identified as 48-year-old Edric Lamont Faust. Investigators did not reveal the exact methods used to identify him, but stated that advanced DNA analysis and biological evidence were crucial in the process. To avoid compromising the ongoing legal case, they withheld specific details, which will be disclosed during the trial. The arrest documents listed multiple charges against Edric, including assault, which may have allowed for a DNA match. Additionally, skin cells found under the victim's nails may have been analyzed using modern tools to extract the killer's DNA. As for Edric, his extensive criminal record, which included numerous arrests for various offenses, should have put him in the FBI database long ago. At the time of Tara's murder, Edric was 25 years old and lived in the same city as the victim. However, the police found no evidence to suggest that Edric knew Tara, leading them to believe he may have broken into her home or tricked her into letting him in. Edric was not a suspect in the case until a few days before his arrest, when new DNA analysis methods brought him to the attention of detectives. He is currently in jail awaiting trial. The evidence the police have against him will be revealed during the trial process. The fact that Edric was denied bail suggests that the detectives have obtained conclusive DNA evidence. The police are certain that Edric is responsible for Tara's murder, and as a result, her case is now officially closed. There is currently no verdict for Edric. He was charged with 1 count of premeditated murder, 4 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of burglary, 2 counts of aggravated sodomy, 1 count of rape, 1 count of aggravated assault, first-degree arson, and possession of a knife during the commission of a felony. Tara's family finally has closure after 23 years of searching for the truth. They expressed gratitude to the new team of detectives who helped solve her case. In contrast, Rhonda Coleman's case, which the law is also named after, remains unsolved. However, her family may now feel hopeful that new evidence will be uncovered and justice will be served, just like in Tara's case.